They said a mate bond couldn't be broken. They said an Alpha King's claim was absolute. Alara Voss proved them all wrong, and it nearly destroyed a kingdom. This is the story of a woman who refused to be owned, two alphas who learned what power truly costs, and the war that erupted when she chose herself over them both. Stay until the end to see how one defiant choice shattered centuries of tradition. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. Hit that like button, and let's dive into a story of survival, strength, and forbidden love. The throne room reeked of blood and wet fur. Alara stood in the center of it all, her wrists bound with silver-threaded rope that burned against her skin. Around her, the remnants of what had once been the Voss pack, her pack, knelt in submission, their heads bowed, their eyes averted, defeated. She refused to lower hers. Kael Draven circled her slowly, his boots echoing against the stone floor. He moved like a predator assessing prey, all controlled power and lethal grace. The Alpha King of the Northern Territories was everything the stories claimed. Tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes the color of winter storms, and a face carved from granite and cruelty. His presence filled the room like smoke, choking out air and hope in equal measure. "Look at me," he commanded. Alara's jaw clenched. She'd been taught since childhood never to meet an alpha's direct gaze. It was challenge, it was suicide. But what did it matter now? Her father was dead. Her brothers scattered or slaughtered. Her home burned to ash by Kael's forces 3 nights ago. She had nothing left to lose. So she looked. Their eyes met and something crackled in the air between them. Electric, inevitable, unwanted. Kael stopped mid-stride. His nostrils flared. His pupils dilated, wolf rising to the surface. "No," Alara whispered. The word escaped before she could stop it. A slow, terrible smile curved Kael's mouth. "Yes." The mate bond snapped into place like a collar around her throat. She felt it, that ancient primal recognition that transcended logic or choice. Her wolf, battered and exhausted from days of running, lifted its head and whined, wanting, recognizing, betraying her completely. "This can't be happening," Alara breathed. "And yet it is." Kael's voice was dark honey and gravel. He closed the distance between them in 2 strides, reaching out to grip her chin. His touch burned, not from the silver, from something far more dangerous. "You are mine, Alara Voss. Fate has decided it. The bond has claimed us both." "I don't want this." She tried to jerk away, but his hold tightened. "What you want is irrelevant." His thumb traced her jawline with shocking gentleness that contradicted everything else about him. "You'll learn that quickly enough." Around them, his warriors watched with hungry eyes. Pack members who'd served him without question, who'd cut through her family like wheat before a scythe. One of them, a scarred brute named Marcus, stepped forward. "My king, if she's your mate, the ceremony should be conducted properly, at the full moon with the elders present. I don't take orders from you, Marcus." Kael didn't even glance at him. His gaze remained locked on Alara. "And I don't wait for ceremonies when claiming what's mine." Fear spiked through her. "What does that mean?" "It means you're coming with me, tonight. You'll be presented to the court as my queen, and by week's end you'll bear my mark." He released her chin, turning to address the room. "The Voss territory is now under Draven rule. Any pack member who wishes to pledge loyalty will be accepted into our ranks. Those who resist will be hunted." "Butcher," Alara spat. "You murdered my family, destroyed our home, and now you expect me to stand beside you as if none of that matters?" Finally, Kael looked at her with something other than possessive hunger. Irritation flickered across his features. "Your father was weak. He allowed raiders from the eastern packs to cross his borders, let them steal from northern territories without consequence. When I demanded he answer for his negligence, he challenged my authority. So you killed him. He challenged me to single combat. I accepted. He lost." Kael's expression hardened. "That's how our world works, Alara. The strong survive, the weak fall. Your father fell." She wanted to rage at him, to shift and tear out his throat despite the silver burning her wrists. But beneath the fury was a terrible truth she couldn't ignore. Her father had been weak, had let their borders become porous, their pack laws unenforced. She'd begged him to take action, to strengthen their defenses. He'd called her hysterical, told her a female couldn't understand matters of territory and war. Now he was dead, and she was bound to his killer. "I won't make this easy for you," she said quietly. Kale laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. "I don't want easy. I want obedience. There's a difference." He gestured to two female wolves near the door. "Take her to my chambers. Get her cleaned up and dressed appropriately. The court gathers in 2 hours." The women approached cautiously. One of them, younger, with kind eyes, touched Alara's elbow gently. "Please, miss, it's better if you don't fight." Better for whom? But Alara let them lead her away. Not because she was giving in, but because she needed to see the layout of Kael's fortress, needed to understand her prison if she had any hope of escaping it. The corridors of Draven Keep were all stone and shadow, lit by torches that cast dancing shadows on walls decorated with weapons and wolf pelts. Trophies, she realized with sick understanding. Previous enemies displayed like art. Would her family's pelts join them soon? The chambers they brought her to were surprisingly lavish. A massive bed draped in furs, a fire crackling in an ornate hearth, windows overlooking the mountain ranges that separated the northern territories from the rest of the kingdom. Beautiful and terrible, like everything else about Kael Draven. "What's your name?" Alara asked the younger woman as she carefully cut away the silver bindings. "Lissa, miss. I serve the household staff." She worked quickly, her touch gentle. "I'm sorry about everything. About your family. But not sorry enough to help me escape." Lissa's hands stilled. "There is no escaping the Alpha King. Those who try—" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. The older woman, stern-faced and silent, brought forward a gown of deep crimson silk. It was beautiful, clearly expensive, and Alara hated it on sight. "I'm not wearing that." "You don't have a choice," the older woman said flatly. "The king requires you be presented appropriately." "The king can go to hell." A sharp knock on the door interrupted them. Kael entered without waiting for permission, because of course he did. He'd changed into formal attire, black leather and dark fabrics that made him look even more dangerous, if that was possible. His gaze swept over Alara, still in her torn and bloodied clothes, then to the untouched gown. "I see we're already having problems. I won't be dressed up like a doll for your court's amusement. You'll be dressed as befits my queen, or you'll be presented in chains. Your choice." He moved closer, and Alara's wolf stirred despite her fury. The mate bond hummed between them, a constant electric current she couldn't shut off. "But understand this, Alara. I will have your submission, one way or another. You'll have my hatred." "I'll take that too." He reached out, tucking a strand of her hair behind her ear. The gesture was almost tender, which made it more unsettling. "You don't understand yet. Everything I do for the survival of our kind. Your father's weakness was putting us all at risk. The raids from the Eastern Pacts weren't random. They were testing our defenses, looking for cracks in our territories. If I hadn't acted, we'd be facing full-scale war within the year. So you decided to start the war yourself. I decided to end it before it began." His hand dropped to her shoulder, thumb stroking the pulse point at her throat. Her heartbeat kicked up and his eyes darkened with satisfaction. "The bond doesn't lie, Alara. Your wolf knows what your human mind refuses to accept. We're meant for this." "Meant for what? For you to own me? For us to rule together?" He stepped back, gesturing to Lissa and the older woman. "Dress her. I'll return in an hour. If she's not ready, there will be consequences. For all of you." The threat was clear. He left, and the weight in the room lifted slightly. Alara closed her eyes. "Fine. I'll wear the damn dress." The court of Draven Keep was a sea of wolves in human skin, all gathered in the great hall to witness their king present his mate. Alara stood on the raised platform beside Kael's throne, the crimson gown clinging to her like a second skin, and felt hundreds of eyes assessing her. Some looked curious, others skeptical. A few radiated outright hostility. Kael stood beside her, one hand resting possessively on her lower back. To anyone watching, they probably looked like a proper mated pair. Only Alara could feel the tension in his grip, the warning in his touch. "My wolves!" Kael's voice carried across the hall, commanding instant silence. "Tonight marks a new era for the Northern Territories. Fate has granted me a mate, Elara Voss, daughter of the fallen Alpha Voss, now joined to our pack by the sacred mate bond. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Elara caught fragments. Voss pack was destroyed. How convenient. She doesn't look strong enough. Some of you question this union, Kael continued, his tone sharpening. You wonder if a mate from a conquered pack can be trusted. Let me be clear, Elara is mine by right of the bond and by right of conquest. Any challenge to her is a challenge to me, and you all know what happens to those who challenge me. The murmurs died instantly. Furthermore, Kael pulled Elara closer, and she fought not to stiffen. Within the week, I will mark her formally. Our union will be sealed, and she will stand as your queen. You will show her the same respect you show me, or face the same consequences. An older wolf near the front, his hair silver with age, stepped forward. My king, forgive my boldness, but tradition requires a mate prove herself worthy of standing beside the alpha. Has she demonstrated her strength, her ability to lead? Kael's hand tightened on Elara's back. She could feel his wolf rising, ready to put down any challenge. But before he could speak, something reckless and furious surged through her. You want proof of my strength? Elara stepped forward, shaking off Kael's hold. The entire hall went still. My pack was destroyed. My family slaughtered, and yet here I stand, alive and unbroken. Your king may have claimed me by force, but I haven't submitted. I haven't bowed. If that's not strength, then your definition is as weak as you claim my father was. Shock rippled through the crowd. Kael's expression was unreadable, but she felt his fury through the bond, hot and dangerous. The silver-haired elder's eyebrows rose. You dare speak to your alpha king with such disrespect? I speak truth. If that's disrespectful, then your court values lies over honesty. Elara met his gaze steadily. My father was weak. I won't pretend otherwise. But weakness isn't inherited. I am not him. And if I'm to be your queen, whether I want it or not, you'll get honesty from me, not pretty words and false submission. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, surprisingly, the elder smiled. Perhaps there's more to you than breeding, girl. Time will tell. Kael's hand wrapped around Elara's wrist, his grip just short of painful. That's enough. He addressed the court again, his tone brooking no argument. The presentation is complete. You've seen your future queen. Now leave us. The crowd dispersed quickly, but Elara caught whispers and sidelong glances. She'd made an impression, whether good or bad remained to be seen. The moment the hall emptied, Kael spun her to face him. What the hell was that? That was me not being your puppet. She tried to pull free, but he held firm. You could have gotten yourself killed. If any of them had taken your words as a challenge, then they would have challenged me, and we'd have learned exactly how weak or strong I am. Elara lifted her chin. You want me to be your queen? Fine. But I won't be a silent ornament on your arm. If I'm doing this, I'm doing it my way. For a moment she thought he might strike her. His eyes blazed with wolf fire, his jaw clenched so tight she could see the muscle jumping. But then, unexpectedly, he laughed. You're insane. I'm a survivor. There's a difference. Kael released her wrist, but didn't step back. They stood toe to toe, both breathing hard, the mate bond crackling between them like lightning about to strike. You're going to be trouble. I promised you that already, so you did. His gaze dropped to her mouth, and heat flooded through her, unwanted, undeniable. The bond wanted this, wanted him, and fighting it was like fighting gravity. But understand, Elara, I meant what I said. You'll bear my mark by week's end. You'll stand as my queen, and you will submit to me eventually. Keep telling yourself that. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb tracing her lower lip. The touch sent sparks racing down her spine. Your mouth says no, but your body tells a different story. The bond doesn't lie. She slapped his hand away. The bond can go straight to hell along with you. Instead of angering him, that made him smile. A real smile that transformed his harsh features into something almost handsome, almost human. There she is, the fire I felt the moment I saw you. He stepped back, giving her space. Get some rest. Tomorrow, I'm taking you to meet the pack elders. They'll want to test you. Test me how? You'll find out. He moved toward the door, then paused. And Elara, tonight, in front of my court, that was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've seen in years. I haven't decided which. Does it matter? Not really. Either way, it was magnificent. Then he was gone, leaving her alone with her racing heart and the treacherous warmth the mate bond had spread through her veins. Elara sank onto the edge of the massive bed, her legs finally giving out. What had she done? She'd antagonized an alpha king in front of his entire court, challenged the natural order, made herself a target. And part of her, the part connected to that cursed bond, had loved every second of it. She buried her face in her hands. I'm going to die here. But even as she thought it, her wolf stirred, not in fear or submission, in anticipation. Whatever came next, she wouldn't face it on her knees. The next morning arrived too soon, announced by Lysa entering with breakfast and a fresh set of clothes, leather pants and a fitted tunic, more practical than the gown but still clearly expensive. The Alpha King requests your presence in the training yards, Lysa said, setting down the tray. He says to dress for physical activity. Of course he does. Elara picked at the food. Bread, meat, cheese, all of it rich and well prepared. Her stomach growled despite her anxiety. What kind of tests do the elders usually conduct? Lysa hesitated. I shouldn't say. But you will, because you're kind, and you don't actually want to see me fail. Elara met her eyes. Please. The girl sighed. Combat trials usually, assessing whether a mate is strong enough to stand beside the alpha. But you're already claimed, so... She trailed off, looking uncertain. So they can't exactly reject me, but they can make me suffer. Elara nodded. Wonderful. 20 minutes later, she stood in the center of a large training yard, surrounded by wolves in both human and shifted forms. The pack elders, 5 of them, including the silver-haired man from last night, sat in a semicircle on raised benches. Kyle stood off to the side, arms crossed, watching with an unreadable expression. The silver-haired elder stood. Elara Voss, you've been claimed by our Alpha King through the mate bond. Tradition requires we verify you possess the strength, skill, and will to stand as his equal. I'm not his equal, Elara said flatly. No one is. That's kind of the whole problem with this situation. Kael's lips twitched, almost a smile. The elder continued as if she hadn't spoken. You will face 3 trials, combat, wisdom, and will. Succeed, and we acknowledge you as our queen. Fail, and... He paused significantly. Well, that hasn't happened in living memory. The mate bond doesn't usually choose weakness. How reassuring. Your first trial, combat. You will fight 3 of our warriors in succession. You need not defeat them, merely prove you can hold your own. He gestured, and 3 wolves stepped forward. All male, all significantly larger than Elara, all looking at her with varying degrees of skepticism and pity. Great. Can I shift? She asked. If you wish. Though I'd advise against it, your wolf is exhausted from the trauma of recent days. You'd be at a disadvantage. He was right, and she hated that he was right. Her wolf was still recovering, still raw from the loss of pack bonds and home. Fighting in human form was smarter. The first warrior approached, a young male with eager eyes and quick movements. He came at her fast, probably expecting an easy victory. Elara had been fighting off challengers since she was 12 years old. Being a female in a male-dominated pack hierarchy meant constantly proving yourself, constantly defending your space. She sidestepped his lunge, using his momentum against him, and swept his legs out from under him. He went down hard, shock written across his face. Too easy, she muttered, then had to dodge as he recovered and came at her again, this time with less arrogance and more caution. They traded blows, his superior strength against her speed and experience. She took hits that would bruise, landed strikes that made him grunt. The fight lasted maybe 3 minutes before the elder called it. Enough. You've proven basic competency. The warrior nodded respectfully to her as he stepped back, which surprised her. Maybe she'd earned something there. The second fighter was older, more experienced. He didn't rush. He circled, looking for openings, testing her defenses. This fight was harder. He knew how to counter her speed, how to use his reach advantage. She ended up on her back twice, tasting blood, ribs aching, but she got up both times. Enough, the elder called again. 2 down. 1 to go. The third warrior who stepped forward made Elara's stomach drop. Marcus. the scarred brute who'd questioned Kyle yesterday. He didn't just want to test her. He wanted to hurt her. This isn't necessary, Kale's voice cut across the yard. She's proven herself. The trial requires 3 combats, my king, the elder said smoothly. Tradition must be observed. Marcus grinned, cracking his knuckles. Don't worry, little queen. I'll go easy on you. He didn't. The first punch came so fast, Alara barely got her arms up to block. The impact sent her staggering. The second caught her in the ribs, the same ribs already bruised from the previous fight. Pain exploded through her chest. She went down, gasping. Get up, Marcus taunted. Show us that fire from last night. Or was that all talk? Through the pain, Alara heard Kyle growl, a sound that made every wolf in the yard freeze. Marcus, stand down. Now. The trial isn't complete. I said stand down. Power rolled off Kyle in waves, the alpha command impossible to resist. Marcus hesitated, caught between obedience and whatever grudge he was nursing. And Alara, lying in the dirt with her ribs screaming, made a choice. She got up. No, she gasped, forcing herself to her feet despite the agony. He's right. The trial isn't complete. Kale's eyes widened. Alara, I can do this. She faced Marcus, blood trickling from her split lip. Come on then, let's finish it. The brute's grin widened. As you wish, your majesty. He came at her like a freight train, but this time Alara was ready. She'd been watching his patterns, his tells. He favored his right side, compensating for an old injury. He telegraphed his big strikes with a slight shoulder dip. She used it all. When he swung, she ducked under and drove her elbow into his injured side. He grunted, and she followed with a knee to his gut. It was like hitting a brick wall, but he stumbled. She didn't let up, couldn't afford to. She hit him with everything she had, elbows, knees, palm strikes to vulnerable points. Not fighting to win, but fighting to survive. Fighting to prove she wouldn't break. Marcus eventually caught her wrist and twisted, bringing her to her knees. His other hand wrapped around her throat. Submit. No. He squeezed. Black spots danced in her vision. Her wolf snarled, clawing to the surface despite its exhaustion. The mate bond flared hot and desperate, and she felt Kyle's rage like it was her own. Marcus! Kyle's voice was death itself. Release her or I'll rip your throat out myself. But before Marcus could comply, or refuse, Alara shifted. It was partial, painful. Her body not quite ready, but her wolf refusing to submit. Her hand became clawed, and she raked those claws across Marcus's face. He released her with a howl, stumbling back, blood streaming from 4 deep gashes. Alara collapsed, her body shaking from the forced partial shift, but her wolf's eyes stared out at Marcus with pure defiance. Trial complete, the silver-haired elder announced, his voice holding a note of approval. She's proven her will to survive. That's enough. Kyle was at her side instantly, hands gentle as he helped her shift back to full human form. You stupid, stubborn... He bit off whatever he was going to say, instead checking her throat where Marcus's fingers had left bruises already forming. I'm fine, Alara croaked. You're bleeding and can barely breathe. Still fine. She coughed and pain lanced through her ribs. Did I pass? The elder approached, looking down at her with something that might have been respect. You did more than pass, girl. You showed what it means to be a true wolf. You fight when you can barely stand. You refuse submission even when submission would end the pain. He glanced at Kyle. Perhaps the bond chose better than we thought. Get the healer, Kale ordered, lifting Alara into his arms despite her weak protests. And Marcus, you're on border patrol for the next month. Far borders. My king, be grateful I don't exile you entirely. You nearly killed my mate. You said to test her. I said test, not murder. Kale's eyes flashed wolf-bright. Consider this your only warning. He carried Alara away from the training yard, and she was too exhausted to fight it. Her head lolled against his shoulder, and she caught the scent of him, pine and smoke, and something wild. The mate bond hummed contentedly at the closeness. Traitor, she thought at it. Why did you do that? Kyle asked quietly as he carried her through the keep's corridors. You could have let me stop the fight. Because if you stop it, they think I'm weak and you're protecting me. If I finish it myself, I earn their respect. She coughed again. Basic pack politics. You're not in your pack anymore. No, I'm in yours. And I need them to see me as something other than a prize you won. She looked up at him, caught his gaze. You said you wanted to rule together. That means they need to respect me as more than just your mate. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. You're smarter than I gave you credit for. Most men make that mistake. He huffed something that might have been a laugh and shouldered open a door. The room beyond was clearly a healer's quarters. Herbs hanging from the rafters, beds lined against the walls, the smell of medicinal poultices thick in the air. A small, elderly woman looked up from grinding herbs and immediately bustled over. What happened? Combat trials, Kyle said shortly, laying Alara on one of the beds. Broken ribs, possibly. Bruised throat. Various other injuries. The healer, who introduced herself as Mara, shooed Kyle away and began examining Alara with surprisingly gentle hands. Breathe deep for me, child. Alara tried. Pain. Cracked, not broken. You're lucky. Mara mixed a poultice and began applying it to the worst of the bruises. Though I question the wisdom of putting a newly claimed mate through combat trials. The bond is still settling. Stress like this can interfere with the marking process. The elders demanded it, Kyle said from where he stood near the window. The elders are old fools stuck in tradition. Mara's hands never stopped moving. This girl has been through enough trauma. Her pack slaughtered, her family dead, and now she's expected to fight for the privilege of standing beside the wolf who destroyed her home? It's barbaric. Alara blinked. She'd expected everyone in Kyle's pack to be loyal to him without question. But Mara spoke to him like an equal, or maybe like a grandmother scolding a wayward grandson. Mara, Kyle's voice held warning. Oh, hush, you may be Alpha King, but I changed your diapers. You don't scare me. She finished with the poultice and mixed a tea from various dried herbs. Drink this. It'll help with the pain and promote healing. Alara took the cup, wincing at the movement. The tea was bitter, but warming. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You're in for a rough few days. Mara turned to Kyle. She needs rest, real rest, not more trials or ceremonies or political games. Her body and Wolf need time to recover. The marking ceremony is in 5 days. Then delay it. I can't. The pack expects. The pack can wait. Mara's eyes flashed. Or do you want a broken, half-healed mate standing beside you? Is that the image you want to project? Silence stretched taut. Alara watched the interplay between them with fascination. Kyle, who'd ordered the slaughter of her pack without blinking, who'd claimed her like property, looked almost chastised under the old healer's glare. 1 week, he finally said. The ceremony happens in 1 week, not 5 days. That's the best I can do. It'll have to be enough, Mara patted Alara's hand. Rest now, child. I'll bring food later. As the healer bustled away to tend to other patients, Alara found herself alone with Kyle again. He still stood by the window, silhouette dark against the afternoon light. She cares about you, Alara said quietly. She raised me after my mother died. I was 6. What happened to your mother? Raiders from the eastern packs. They crossed our borders, attacked a small settlement. She was there visiting family. His voice was flat, emotionless. By the time my father's warriors arrived, the settlement was destroyed. She was among the dead. Alara's breath caught. Suddenly, his ruthlessness toward her father made more sense, not right, but understandable. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was 20 years ago. But his hands clenched at his sides. My father never recovered. He became obsessed with border security, with crushing any threat before it could materialize. It drove him mad eventually. He started seeing enemies everywhere, even among our own pack. What happened to him? I challenged him when I was 19, put him out of his misery. Kale finally turned to look at her. Does that horrify you? That I killed my own father? I don't know what I feel anymore. Alara's fingers tightened around the empty teacup. 3 days ago, I had a family, a home, a future I'd planned. Now everything's gone and I'm bound to the man who took it all away. I should hate you. I do hate you. But the bond... She trailed off, unable to articulate the confusion. The bond doesn't care about hate or love. Only recognition. Kyle moved closer, sitting on the edge of her bed. I didn't ask for this either, Alara. A mate is a liability, something enemies can use against you, weakness to exploit. Then reject the bond. Can't. I already tried. At her shocked expression, he continued. The moment I recognized you as my mate, my first instinct was to kill you. Eliminate the weakness before it could be used. But I couldn't. The bond wouldn't let me. My wolf nearly tore me apart from the inside just for thinking about it. So we're trapped. We're bound. There's a difference. His hand moved to her face, fingers tracing the bruises Marcus had left on her throat. His touch was surprisingly gentle. For what it's worth, Marcus will pay for this. No one harms what's mine. I'm not a possession. No, you're something far more dangerous. His eyes met hers, and in them she saw the same confusion she felt. You're my equal, whether either of us wants it or not. The bond made sure of that. Before she could respond, Lissa appeared in the doorway, looking nervous. My king, forgive the interruption, but there's a matter requiring your immediate attention. The eastern border. Kale was on his feet instantly. What about it? Scouts report movement. A delegation approaching under a white flag. From which pack? The Ashford territory, my king. Every muscle in Kael's body went tense. Rowan Ashford, of course. He looked back at Alara. Rest. We'll continue this later. Who's Rowan Ashford? But Kael was already gone, leaving her question unanswered and a new tension knotting in her gut. Something told her that whoever Rowan Ashford was, his arrival was going to change everything. Alara spent the rest of the day in the healer's quarters, drifting in and out of sleep while her body worked to repair the damage from the trials. Mara checked on her regularly, bringing food and fresh poultices, clucking disapprovingly at the extent of her bruising. Marcus always was a brute, the old woman muttered while rewrapping Alara's ribs. His father was worse. Beat that boy bloody most of his childhood. Now he takes it out on anyone he perceives as weak. I'm not weak. No, child. You're not. You proved that today. Mara's hands stilled. But be careful. Men like Marcus don't forget being bested, especially not by a woman. He'll be looking for ways to undermine you. Let him try. That's the spirit, but watch your back. Mara finished the wrapping and stepped back. There. You should be able to move more comfortably now, though I still want you resting until morning. What about the delegation, the Ashford Wolves? What about them? Who is Rowan Ashford? Why did Kale react like that when he heard the name? Mara's expression grew cautious. Alpha of the Western Territories, younger than Kael, but nearly as powerful. They have history. What kind of history? The kind that ends in blood if they're not careful. The healer sighed. Rowan's father and Kael's father were rivals. Nearly went to war twice over disputed territory. When Kael took control of the northern pack and Rowan took the western, there was hope they might be different, but old grudges die hard. Why would he come here now and under a white flag? That, child, is a very good question. Alara learned the answer the next morning when Kael summoned her to the Great Hall. She walked in to find him seated on his throne, various advisors and warriors flanking him. And standing in the center of the hall, looking entirely too calm for a wolf in rival territory, was Rowan Ashford. He was younger than Kael, maybe late 20s, with warm brown eyes and an easy smile that seemed completely out of place in the hostile environment. Where Kael was all sharp edges and controlled power, Rowan radiated approachability. Where Kael looked like he'd been carved from winter storms, Rowan brought to mind summer sun. And when those brown eyes landed on Alara, they widened with something that looked like recognition. This must be the mate I've heard rumors about, Rowan said, his voice carrying none of the edge or dominance that laced Kael's speech. Alara Voss, isn't it? I'm sorry for your loss. Your father was a good man. Kael's fingers tightened on the arm of his throne. You didn't come here to offer condolences, Ashford. State your business. Right to the point. I'd forgotten how charming you are. Rowan turned back to Kael, but his expression remained pleasant. I came to propose an alliance. An alliance? Kael's laugh was sharp. Between you and me? Why would I ally myself with the West? Because the Eastern packs are mobilizing. They've been testing both our borders, looking for weaknesses. Separately, we're targets. Together, we could crush any attempt at invasion before it starts. Rowan pulled a rolled parchment from his coat. I have intelligence reports, troop movements, evidence of coordination between at least 4 eastern territories. One of Kael's advisors stepped forward to take the parchment, unrolling it and scanning the contents. His expression grew grim. My king, this appears legitimate. Of course it's legitimate. I wouldn't risk coming here with fabricated evidence. Rowan's gaze flicked to Alara again, and she felt something. Not the electric recognition of a mate bond, but a different kind of pull. Curiosity, maybe? Or sympathy. Kael stood, descending from the dais with predatory grace. Even if your intelligence is accurate, why come to me? The West has always stood alone. Because standing alone got my father killed and nearly destroyed our pack. I'm not interested in repeating his mistakes. Rowan held his ground as Kael approached. Look, I know we have history. Our fathers hated each other. But we're not our fathers. We have a chance to do things differently. Differently, Kael repeated, stopping just short of Rowan's space. The size difference between them was noticeable. Kael had several inches and probably 30 pounds of muscle on the younger alpha. You mean weaker, softer. I mean smarter. Rowan didn't back down. But if you'd rather cling to old grudges while the Eastern packs circle like vultures, that's your choice. I tried. He turned to leave, and Alara found herself speaking before she could think better of it. What's your offer, specifically? Both alphas turned to look at her. Kael's expression was thunderous. Rowan's was intrigued. Alara, Kael's voice held warning. I'm your mate and supposed queen, aren't I? Don't I get a say in matters that affect our pack's survival? She stepped forward, ignoring the pain in her ribs. You said we'd rule together, or was that just pretty words? Silence fell across the hall. She'd challenged him again, in front of witnesses, and she could feel his fury through the bond like wildfire. But beneath it was something else. Surprise. Maybe even respect? Rowan smiled. I like her already. He addressed Alara directly. My offer is simple. A mutual defense pact. If the Eastern packs attack Northern territory, Western wolves will come to your aid. If they attack Western territory, Northern wolves will come to ours. We share intelligence, coordinate border patrols, present a united front. And in return? Alara asked. In return, we both survive what's coming. What is coming? She looked between the two alphas. You're both talking like war is inevitable. Because it is, Kael said quietly. The Eastern packs have been fragmented for decades, too busy fighting amongst themselves to threaten the rest of us. But 6 months ago, a new leader emerged, someone strong enough to unite them under one banner. Who? We don't know yet. Whoever it is keeps their identity hidden. Rowan's expression darkened. But they're smart, organized, and they're building an army. My scouts estimate they've consolidated at least 6 territories so far. If they keep expanding, they'll control half the kingdom, Alara finished. Her mind raced, pieces clicking into place. And then they'll come for the rest of us. Northern and Western territories combined would be the biggest prize. Exactly. Rowan looked at her with open approval. You understand strategy. I had to. My father didn't. The admission hurt, but it was true. He ignored the warning signs, and it got him killed. Kael's expression shifted, some of the anger fading. Which is why I acted when I did. Your father's territory was a weak point in our northern defenses. I couldn't afford to let it remain vulnerable. So you slaughtered everyone and took it by force. I challenged your father to single combat and won. The rest of your pack had the choice to swear loyalty or leave. Those who fought back chose their own fate. His jaw clenched. I'm not apologizing for doing what was necessary. I'm not asking you to. Alara turned back to Rowan. Your offer, it makes sense. Strategically, we're stronger together than apart. But alliances require trust, and you two clearly don't trust each other. Which is where you come in, Rowan said. Me? You're neutral, not tied to the old grudges between North and West. If you vouch for the alliance, if you stand as guarantor... He trailed off, looking at Kael. It would mean something, to both our packs. Absolutely not. Kael moved to stand beside Alara, positioning himself between her and Rowan. She's not getting involved in this. Why not? You said we'd rule together. Alara met his eyes. Or is that only when it suits you? You're recovering from combat trials. You barely know our pack's dynamics, let alone the political landscape. Then teach me, unless you'd rather leave me pretty and silent on your arm like a decoration." Rowan laughed. "Oh, I definitely like her. She's got more spine than half your advisors, Draven." "Shut up, Ashford. Make me." The tension between the two alphas crackled like lightning about to strike. Alara could see it escalating, old rivalries bubbling to the surface, despite Rowan's supposed peaceful intentions. She stepped between them. "Both of you, stop posturing like children." She looked at Kael. "If this intelligence is real, if we're facing a unified Eastern threat, then we need allies. You know that." "I don't need anyone," Kael growled. "No, you want to not need anyone. There's a difference." She turned to Rowan. "And you, stop antagonizing him. If you actually want an alliance, act like it." Rowan's smile turned genuine. "You're right. I apologize." He addressed Kael more seriously. "Look, I know this isn't easy. Our fathers would probably be rolling in their graves right now, but they're dead and we're alive, and there's a war coming whether we like it or not. We can face it divided and probably die, or we can face it together and maybe, just maybe, we survive." Kael was silent for a long moment, and Alara could feel the conflict raging through him via the bond. Pride versus pragmatism. Old grudges versus new threats. Finally, he spoke. "I'll consider your proposal, but I need time to verify your intelligence independently, and I want concessions. Such as joint training exercises with our warriors, transparency on your pack's numbers and capabilities, and any agreement we make includes clear territorial boundaries. No disputes, no encroachment." "Done. On the condition that you offer the same transparency." Rowan extended his hand. "1 week to finalize terms?" Kael stared at the offered hand like it might bite him. Then slowly, he clasped it. 1 week. "But Ashford, if this is some kind of trap, if you betray us, you'll rip my throat out." "Yes," I gathered. Rowan's grip tightened briefly before releasing. "I'm not my father, Draven, and I keep my word." "See that you do." As Rowan prepared to leave with his small delegation, he paused beside Alara. "It was a pleasure meeting you, despite the circumstances. I hope we'll have a chance to speak more when I return, perhaps without quite so much testosterone poisoning the air." Alara surprised herself by smiling. "I'd like that." Kael's growl was low and dangerous. Alara. "What? I'm being diplomatic. Isn't that what queens do?" Rowan's laugh echoed through the hall as he departed, leaving Alara alone with a visibly irritated Alpha King and a hall full of witnesses who just watched her challenge him. Again. This was becoming a pattern. Kael dismissed the advisors with a sharp gesture, waiting until they were alone before rounding on her. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" "Helping. You're welcome. I don't need your help, and I certainly don't need you making nice with Rowan Ashford." "Why? Because he's your rival? Or because he treated me like an actual person instead of property?" She crossed her arms, ignoring the twinge in her ribs. "He listened when I spoke, didn't try to shut me down or tell me to stay quiet. He was playing you, trying to get under my skin by being charming and approachable." Kael closed the distance between them. "And it worked. Maybe he was just being decent. Have you considered that? There's no such thing as just being decent in pack politics. Everyone has an angle." "What's yours?" The question came out sharper than she intended. "What's your angle with me, Kael? Because I know it's not love. The bond might force recognition, but it doesn't create feelings. So what do you want from me?" He looked at her for a long moment, something complicated moving across his face. "I want you to survive. To be strong enough to stand beside me when the war comes. Because it is coming, Alara, and when it does, I need to know my mate won't break." "I won't break. I've already proven that." "Have you?" His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing the bruise on her cheekbone. "Or are you just good at hiding the cracks?" The gentleness in his touch, the genuine concern in his eyes. It caught her off guard. This wasn't the ruthless Alpha King who'd slaughtered her pack. This was someone else, someone more human, someone dangerous in an entirely different way. "I should go," she whispered. "Mara said I need rest." "Alara?" But she was already pulling away, putting distance between them before the mate bond could muddy her thinking any further. She needed space, needed to think without his presence overwhelming her senses. As she left the great hall, she could feel his eyes on her back, and deep in her chest, the bond hummed with something that felt dangerously close to longing. She ignored it. She had to. Because the alternative, admitting that part of her was starting to want him, was too terrifying to contemplate. 3 days ago, her world had ended. Now, somehow, a new one was beginning to take shape. And Alara had no idea if that made her a survivor or a traitor to everything she'd lost. Maybe both. The thought followed her all the way back to Kael's chambers, where she collapsed onto the massive bed and finally let herself cry for everything that was gone and everything that was coming. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new trials, but tonight she allowed herself to grieve. The week that followed brought changes Alara hadn't anticipated. Kael kept his distance, throwing himself into preparations for Rowan's return and the finalization of the alliance. She saw him mostly at meals, tense, silent affairs where they sat at opposite ends of a long table and pretended the mate bond wasn't pulling at them like a frayed rope ready to snap. The pack, meanwhile, watched her with wary curiosity. Some had softened after the combat trials, offering respectful nods when she passed. Others, Marcus's supporters mostly, made their hostility clear through narrowed eyes and whispered conversations that stopped when she entered a room. She was an outsider in her own supposed home, and everyone knew it. "You need to establish yourself," Mara told her one morning while changing her bandages. The ribs were healing faster than human normal, wolf metabolism working its magic, but still tender. "The pack respects strength, but they also need to see you as more than just the Alpha King's mate." "What do you suggest? More combat trials?" Alara flexed her hand, testing the mobility. "Better. Because I'm pretty sure Marcus would love another shot at me. I suggest you find your purpose here. What can you offer this pack that they don't already have?" Mara's eyes were sharp despite her age. "Every wolf serves a function. Warriors fight, healers mend, scouts gather intelligence. What's your function, child?" Alara had been asking herself the same question. Back in her father's pack, she'd managed logistics, supply routes, food storage, trade negotiations. Boring work that her brothers had mocked, but essential. A pack couldn't fight on empty stomachs or defend territory without proper resources. "I'm good with numbers," she said slowly. "Organization. My father never appreciated it, but I kept our pack's records, made sure we had what we needed when we needed it." "Then do that here." Mara tied off the bandage with practiced efficiency. "Kael's current steward is competent but overwhelmed. We're twice the size we were a year ago, absorbing your father's territory plus refugees from 3 other collapsed packs. Our supply lines are stretched thin. He'd never let me near something that important. He might if you prove yourself useful first." A sly smile crossed the old woman's face. "Start small. The kitchens are always understaffed and over budget. Show them you can streamline operations there. Word will spread." It wasn't a bad idea. Alara had spent the last week feeling useless, trapped in a role she didn't want with no clear path forward. At least this gave her something to do besides avoid her mate and dodge hostile pack members. She found the head cook, a gruff woman named Petra, who looked ready to bite Alara's head off the moment she entered the kitchen. "Let me guess," Petra said, not looking up from the venison she was butchering. "The new queen wants to inspect the kitchens, make sure we're doing everything proper for her delicate sensibilities." "Actually, I want to help." That got Petra's attention. She set down her knife, wiping bloody hands on her apron. "Help. I'm good with logistics. Mara mentioned you're over budget and understaffed. Maybe I can find inefficiencies, suggest improvements." Alara kept her voice level, non-threatening. "If I'm going to be stuck here, I might as well be useful." Petra studied her for a long moment. "You really Voss's daughter? Because he never struck me as the type to raise a girl who wanted to get her hands dirty." "He wasn't. I did it despite him, not because of him." A grunt that might have been approval. "Fine. But you follow my rules in my kitchen. I don't care if you're the Alpha King's mate. You get in my way, I'll toss you out." "Fair enough?" Alara spent the next 3 days in the kitchens, and what she found was worse than she'd expected. Supplies were ordered haphazardly, with no centralized system for tracking inventory. Food spoiled before it could be used. The same ingredients were purchased from 3 different suppliers at wildly different prices. Staff schedules were a mess, leading to too many cooks during slow periods and not enough during meal rushes. It was chaos masquerading as functionality. She drew up charts, reorganized storage, negotiated better rates with suppliers by consolidating orders. Petra watched skeptically at first, then with growing interest as Alara demonstrated how much they could save. "This would cut our spending by nearly 30%, the cook said, reviewing Alara's proposals. "Why hasn't anyone done this before?" "Because no one was looking. Everyone assumed if food showed up, the system worked." Alara tapped the column of numbers. "But working and working efficiently are different things, especially now with the pack's size doubled. The Alpha King should see this. The Alpha King is busy and avoiding her. But if you implement it and it works, word will spread. That's enough for me." Petra's respect, grudgingly given, felt like a small victory. The real test came 4 days later when Rowan Ashford returned. He arrived with a larger delegation this time, 20 wolves, all armed, but displaying the white flag of truce prominently. Kale received them in the Great Hall again, and this time Alara was summoned not as an afterthought, but as a necessary participant. She took her place beside Kyle's throne, acutely aware of every eye on her. The crimson gown had been replaced with more practical attire, leather and dark fabric that marked her as warrior as much as queen. A statement, carefully chosen. "Ashford," Kale's greeting was curt. "You have the terms." "I do." Rowan stepped forward, looking infuriatingly comfortable despite being surrounded by hostile wolves. His eyes found Alara, and he smiled. "Good to see you again. You look better than last time, less bruised." "Healing fast. Wolf metabolism." She kept her tone neutral, aware of Kyle's tension beside her. "Lucky you. I once took 3 weeks to heal from cracked ribs." Rowan turned to Kale, producing a thick document. "As requested, complete transparency on Western Pack numbers, capabilities, and current deployments. In return, I expect the same from you." One of Kyle's advisors took the document, scanning it quickly. "It appears complete, my king." Appears being the key word. Kale descended from the dais, taking the papers himself. "I'll have our intelligence officers verify this against our own information. If there are discrepancies, there won't be. I'm not an idiot, Draven. I know what's at stake." Rowan's easy demeanor slipped slightly, showing the steel beneath. "The Eastern Coalition has taken 2 more territories in the last week. They're moving faster than we anticipated. If we don't finalize this alliance soon, it won't matter because we'll both be too busy fighting them off separately." "Show me." Rowan nodded to one of his wolves, who unrolled a large map across the strategy table. Red markers indicated Eastern Coalition territories. 6 had become 8, a spreading stain across the eastern half of the kingdom. "They hit the Redwood Pack 3 days ago," Rowan explained, pointing. "Overwhelmed them in less than 12 hours. Any survivors were given the same choice: join the coalition or die. Most joined." Kale's expression darkened. "The Redwood Alpha was strong. How did they fall so fast?" "Coordination. They didn't just attack from one direction. They hit from 4 simultaneously, cutting off escape routes and supply lines. It was surgical." Rowan traced the markers. "This isn't random expansion. Someone's running a military campaign, and they're good at it." Alara leaned closer, studying the map. Something about the pattern nagged at her. "They're not just taking territory. They're taking specific territories." Both alphas turned to look at her. "What do you mean?" Kyle asked. She pointed to the red markers. "Look at the geography. Every pack they've absorbed controls either a major trade route, a river crossing, or a mountain pass. They're not conquering randomly. They're securing strategic positions." Rowan's eyebrows rose. "She's right. I hadn't noticed the pattern, but..." He traced the routes. "They're building infrastructure for a larger invasion. Control the supply lines, control the battlefield, which means their next targets will be here." Alara indicated 2 territories, one northern, one western, that sat on crucial trade routes. "The Ironwood Pack in your territory and the Silverpine Pack in ours. Both control river crossings that would allow them to move troops and supplies deeper into our lands." Silence fell across the hall as the implications sank in. "We need to reinforce both packs immediately," Rowan said. "If we lose those crossings, we lose our ability to coordinate defense." Kale's jaw clenched. "How long do we have?" "Based on their pace, 2 weeks. Maybe 3 if we're lucky." Then we don't have time for lengthy negotiations. Kale looked at Rowan directly. The alliance is approved. I'll have my steward draw up formal documents, but we act on it now, today. Rowan extended his hand. Agreed. This time when Kyle clasped it, there was less hostility in the gesture. Still wary, still tense, but progress. I'm sending 50 warriors to reinforce Silverpine, Kale said. You do the same for Ironwood. We'll coordinate patrol schedules and establish signal stations for rapid communication. Done. I'll also send scouts to monitor coalition movements. If they deviate from the predicted pattern, we adjust accordingly. Kale released Rowan's hand. This doesn't make us friends, Ashford. No. But it makes us allies. That's good enough? Rowan glanced at Alara again. Your mate has a good strategic mind. You should listen to her more often. Before Kyle could respond with what was undoubtedly going to be something territorial and aggressive, Alara spoke up. I'd like to see the Western Pact's supply records. If we're coordinating militarily, we should also coordinate logistics. Make sure both our forces have what they need. Rowan's smile widened. Smart. I'll have them sent over. Alara, Kale's tone held warning. I'm not what? Qualified? Too delicate? She turned to face him fully, aware they had an audience but past caring. I just identified the coalition's strategy when neither of you saw it. I've spent the last week streamlining our kitchen operations and will save us thousands in wasted resources. What exactly am I not capable of? The hall went deadly silent. Challenging an Alpha King twice in front of witnesses might have been pushing it, but Alara was tired of being treated like decorative furniture. Kyle's eyes flashed wolf bright. The bond between them crackled with his irritation and something else. Pride? Respect? Hard to tell. Fine, he said after a long moment. You want to manage logistics, manage them. But if this alliance fails because of supply issues, it won't. See that it doesn't. He turned back to Rowan. We'll need to meet weekly to coordinate efforts. Neutral territory. The old border fort between our lands. Agreed. I'll bring my senior strategist. As will I. Kyle paused. And my mate will attend. Since she apparently has insights worth hearing. It wasn't exactly a ringing endorsement, but it was acknowledgement. Alara would take it. The meeting concluded with plans to finalize the formal alliance documents within 48 hours. As Rowan's delegation prepared to leave, he approached Alara while Kyle was distracted by his advisors. That took courage, he said quietly, challenging him like that. Or stupidity, the jury's still out. No, it was courage. His brown eyes were warm, genuine. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Honestly? Someone broken, traumatized, given what you've been through. He trailed off, looking uncomfortable. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have brought it up. It's fine, everyone thinks it. Alara straightened her shoulders. But I learned a long time ago that the world doesn't care if you're broken. You either survive or you don't. Still, what Kyle did to your pack was brutal and efficient and exactly what an Alpha King does to maintain control. The words tasted like ash, but they were true. I can hate it and understand it at the same time. Rowan studied her with an intensity that made her uncomfortable, not threatening like Kyle's predatory focus, but something else, like he was seeing her clearly for the first time. If you ever need anything, he said finally, an ally, a friend, someone to talk to who isn't bound to you by fate, my territory's borders are always open to you. That's a dangerous offer to make to another Alpha's mate. Maybe, but I meant what I said about doing things differently than our fathers. That includes not treating alliances as purely transactional. He smiled. Besides, something tells me you could use a friend. Before Alara could respond, Kyle was there, inserting himself physically between them. Ashford, I believe your delegation is ready to depart. Right. Wouldn't want to overstay my welcome. But Rowan's eyes stayed on Alara. Until next week, then. The border fort meeting. I'll be there. Kale watched Rowan leave with barely concealed hostility, then rounded on Alara the moment they were alone. What did he say to you? He offered friendship. Is that a crime? From him? Yes. Kyle's hand wrapped around her wrist, not painfully, but firmly. He's playing a game, Alara, trying to use you to get to me. Or maybe he's just being decent. Not everyone has ulterior motives. In our world, Everyone has ulterior motives, especially rival alphas who suddenly want to be friends. He pulled her closer, and the mate bond hummed with his proximity. Stay away from him. You don't get to tell me who I can talk to. I'm your alpha. You're my mate. There's a difference. The bond doesn't give you ownership. She pulled free of his grip. And if we're going to make this alliance work, I need to interact with him. Unless you'd rather I sabotage the whole thing out of spite? Kael's jaw worked, wolf fighting human for control. You're intentionally pushing my buttons. I'm establishing boundaries. If you can't handle that, maybe you should examine why. For a moment, she thought he might actually lose control. His eyes were more wolf than human, his breathing harsh. But then, somehow, he reined it in. You're right, he said, the words clearly costing him. I don't own you. The bond doesn't work that way, no matter how much my instincts say otherwise. He took a step back, giving her space. But understand, Rowan Ashford is dangerous. Not in the same way I am, but dangerous nonetheless. He makes people trust him, care about him, and then he uses it. How do you know? Because I've seen him do it. To his own pack members who questioned his authority, to rival wolves who thought they could exploit his apparent weakness. Kael's expression was grim. He's not cruel like I am. He's worse. He makes you think you matter to him, and then when he needs to, he cuts you loose without hesitation. At least with me, you know where you stand. Do I? The question hung between them. Because most of the time I have no idea what you're thinking or feeling. The bond shows me anger and possession, and sometimes something that might be concern, but beyond that, you're a closed book. That's by design. Why? Because emotions are weaknesses enemies exploit. My father taught me that before I was old enough to shift. He moved to the window, staring out at the mountains. He loved my mother, deeply, completely, the kind of love the old stories promise. And when she died, it destroyed him. He became obsessed, paranoid, seeing threats everywhere. Eventually, it drove him mad, and I had to kill him to save the pack. Alara's breath caught. He'd mentioned his father's death before, but not like this, not with the raw pain bleeding through every word. I swore I'd never let that happen to me, Kael continued. Never let anyone matter enough to break me. And then the mate bond chose you, and suddenly all those walls I've built are under siege from the inside. I didn't ask for this either. I know. He turned to face her. Which is why we need rules. Boundaries, like you said. The bond wants us to merge completely. Thoughts, feelings, everything. But that's a trap. We need to maintain our separate identities if we're going to survive this. Agreed. It was surprisingly rational coming from him. So what are you proposing? Public unity. We present a united front to the pack, to other alphas, to any threats. But privately, we maintain distance. You have your responsibilities, I have mine. We fulfill the mate bond's requirements, the marking ceremony, sharing quarters eventually, but we don't let it consume us. It made sense. Cold, practical sense that should have been a relief. So why did part of her feel disappointed? Fine, she said. One condition. Which is, you actually let me do the work you just assigned me. No micromanaging, no undermining my authority because you don't like my decisions. If I'm managing logistics and attending strategy meetings, I need real power to make changes. Kael considered this. And if you make a mistake that costs lives, then I'll own it. Same as you do when your decisions get people killed. She held his gaze. That's what leadership means, right? Taking responsibility? A ghost of a smile crossed his face. You really are smarter than your father. Low bar. True. He moved toward the door, then paused. The marking ceremony is in 3 days. Are you prepared for that? The marking ceremony, where he would bite her, scar her permanently with his claim, binding them even more tightly than the mate bond already had. The thought made her stomach clench. Do I have a choice? No, the pack expects it, and we can't afford to look weak right now. Then I'm as prepared as I'll ever be. She kept her voice steady despite the fear crawling up her spine. Will it hurt? Yes. But the pain fades quickly, and afterward, he trailed off, looking uncomfortable. The bond will be stronger, more complete. You'll feel what I feel, and I'll feel what you feel, all the time. Wonderful. Exactly what I wanted. Permanent access to your emotional constipation. That surprised a real laugh from him, short but genuine. And you'll subject me to whatever chaotic mess goes on in your head. We're both suffering here. It was the closest they'd come to actual camaraderie, and it felt strange, not bad, just unexpected. 3 days, Alara said. I'll be ready. Good, because after that there's no going back. We'll be bound for life. We're already bound. This will be different, more permanent, more everything. He opened the door. Get some rest. Tomorrow I want you meeting with my supply officers. If you're taking over logistics, you need to know what you're working with. After he left, Alara sank into a chair, exhausted in ways that had nothing to do with physical injury. 3 days until she was marked permanently as Kyle Draven's mate. 3 days until any hope of escape or freedom became truly impossible. She should have been planning to run, to find some way out before the ceremony sealed her fate. But where would she go? Her pack was destroyed, her family dead. Rowan's offer of friendship was kind, but she couldn't impose on someone she barely knew. And beneath all the logical reasons not to run was a truth she didn't want to examine too closely. Part of her didn't want to leave. Part of her wanted to see what she could build here. Wanted to prove herself not just to Kyle or the pack, but to herself. Wanted to become something more than Voss's overlooked daughter or Draven's claimed mate. She wanted to matter. The next 2 days passed in a blur of meetings and preparations. Alara met with supply officers, scouts, and the pack's steward, a nervous man named Garrett, who seemed relieved to have someone else taking over logistics. It's too much for one person, he admitted, showing her ledgers that were months behind. With the territories we've absorbed, the refugees, the preparations for possible war, I can barely keep up with daily operations, let alone long-term planning. Alara dove into the chaos with something approaching relief, numbers and systems she understood. Organizing supply chains was straightforward compared to navigating pack politics or mate bonds. She found inefficiencies everywhere: duplicated orders, spoiled goods, warriors deployed without adequate supplies, refugees settled in areas without sufficient resources to support them. This is going to take weeks to untangle, she told Garrett, maybe months. But you can fix it. I can try. She marked several entries that made no sense. Who approved these purchases? The amounts are triple what we'd normally need. Garrett's expression went carefully neutral. Those were Marcus's requisitions for his warriors. Marcus has warriors under his direct command? The Alpha King allows senior pack members to maintain personal guards. Marcus has 20, maybe 25? They patrol the eastern borders mostly. 25 warriors loyal to someone who'd tried to kill her during the trials and clearly resented her presence. Wonderful. His requisitions need to go through central supply like everyone else's, Alara said firmly. No exceptions. He won't like that. I don't care what he likes. We're preparing for war. We can't afford waste. She made a note. Implement it immediately. If he has a problem, he can take it up with me. Garrett looked uncomfortable but nodded. As you wish, Lady Alara. Word of her decision spread fast. By evening, the pack was buzzing with news that the new queen had challenged Marcus's privileges. Some approved. Efficiency was respected among wolves. Others saw it as proof she was overstepping, trying to accumulate power before she'd even been properly marked. Marcus himself showed up at her temporary work quarters just after sundown. She'd been expecting him. You've got some nerve, he growled, not bothering with pleasantries. Cutting off my warrior's supplies. I'm not cutting anything off. I'm centralizing requisitions to eliminate waste. Alara didn't look up from the ledger she was reviewing. Your warriors will get exactly what they need. No more, no less. Same as everyone else. My warriors are elite fighters. They require specialized equipment. Then submit proper documentation explaining what specialized equipment they need and why. I'll review it and approve appropriate requests. She finally looked at him. But I won't approve blank checks. Not for you, not for anyone. His eyes flashed wolf bright. You think because the Alpha King lets you play administrator, you have real power here? I think the Alpha King assigned me a job and I'm doing it. If you have a problem with that, take it up with him. She stood, meeting his aggressive posture with calm indifference. But we both know you won't. Because challenging him would be suicide and bullying me is easier. You are his mate? Mark it or not, the bond is recognized. Harm me, and you harm him. We both know what happens then. Alara kept her voice level despite her racing heart. So unless you actually want to die, Marcus, I suggest you submit proper requisition forms like everyone else and stop wasting my time. For a moment, she thought he might actually attack her. His wolf was right there, straining against his control, wanting blood. Then Kale's voice cut through the tension. Is there a problem here? He stood in the doorway, radiating the kind of lethal calm that preceded violence. How much had he heard? Marcus took a step back. No, my king, just discussing supply procedures with your mate. Discussing? That's what we're calling it? Kale's eyes never left Marcus. Because it looked like threatening to me. I would never. You would. You have, multiple times. Kale moved into the room and Marcus retreated further. I warned you after the trials. No more chances. My king, please. You're exiled, effective immediately. Take your personal guard and leave Northern Territory by dawn. If you're still here when the sun rises, I'll hunt you myself. Shock rippled across Marcus's face. You can't be serious over a supply dispute? Over repeated insubordination and threats against my mate. Kale's tone could have cut glass. I've tolerated your behavior because you're an effective warrior, but your usefulness doesn't outweigh your liability. Get out. Marcus looked at Alara with pure hatred. This isn't over. It is, Kale said quietly. And if I hear you've spoken to her again, threatened her again, even looked at her wrong, distance won't save you. Understand? Marcus's jaw clenched, but he nodded. Then he was gone, leaving Alara alone with an alpha king who looked like he was fighting not to shift and chase after his fleeing pack member. You didn't have to do that, Alara said. Yes, I did. He was a threat, and I don't tolerate threats to what's mine. Kale's hands were shaking slightly, adrenaline or fury, hard to tell. Are you all right? I'm fine, I was handling it. I know you were. I heard the whole conversation. Something that might have been pride flickered across his face. You didn't back down. Backing down would have shown weakness. Can't afford that, especially not before the marking ceremony. She returned to her ledgers, needing something to do with her hands. Though exiling him might cause problems, his warriors were loyal to him. His warriors will swear loyalty to me or join him in exile. Their choice. Kale moved closer, and she felt the bond pulse with his proximity. Tomorrow's the ceremony. Are you ready? No. As ready as I'll ever be. It'll be public, the whole pack watching, and after, he paused, after we'll need to share quarters. Tradition requires it. Of course it does. Alara took a steadying breath. How does it work? The marking? I bite you. Here. His fingers touched the junction where her neck met her shoulder. Even through the fabric of her shirt, the touch sent heat racing through her. The mark is permanent. It'll scar in the shape of my wolf's bite, and anyone who sees it will know you're claimed. Sounds lovely. It's not meant to be lovely. It's meant to be clear. His hand dropped away. But I'll try to make it quick. Minimize the pain. Appreciate that. Silence stretched between them, heavy with things neither wanted to say. I should go, Kale said finally. You need rest before tomorrow. Kale? She stopped him before he reached the door. Why did you really exile Marcus? It can't just be about him threatening me. You've tolerated worse from others. He was quiet for a long moment. Because I saw the way he looked at you. The hate. And I knew if I didn't remove him now, eventually he'd act on it. And if he hurt you, the bond flared hot with protective fury. The mate bond might be inconvenient, but it's real. And it won't let me ignore threats to you, no matter how much I might want to maintain emotional distance. So you exiled him to protect the bond. I exiled him to protect you. The bond's just the excuse I'm using to justify it to myself. He opened the door. Get some rest, Alara. Tomorrow changes everything. After he left, she tried to follow his advice. But sleep wouldn't come, her mind racing with everything that was about to happen. Tomorrow she'd be marked, bound permanently to a man she barely knew, forced into a role she'd never wanted. Tomorrow, there would be no going back. She stood at the window, staring out at the moonlit mountains, and wondered if somewhere out there, her father's spirit was watching, judging her for accepting this fate instead of fighting it to the death. But her father had died fighting, and what had it accomplished? His pack was destroyed, his children scattered or dead, his legacy reduced to cautionary tales about weak leadership. Maybe there was strength in surviving, in adapting, in making the best of impossible situations. Or maybe she was just rationalizing her own cowardice. The thought followed her into restless sleep, where she dreamed of wolf bites and blood bonds and a pair of winter storm eyes that saw too much. When morning came, bright and cold and unforgiving, Alara rose to face her fate. The marking ceremony would be held at noon in the Great Hall, with the entire pack as witnesses. Until then, she had hours to prepare and nothing to do but think. Lissa helped her dress in ceremonial attire, a gown of deep silver that left her shoulder bare for the marking. Her hair was braided elaborately, woven with small silver chains that caught the light. "You look beautiful," Lissa said softly. "The Alpha King won't be able to take his eyes off you." "That's what I'm afraid of." At noon exactly, Kyle came to escort her to the Great Hall. He wore formal attire as well, black leather and dark fabrics adorned with symbols of his rank. He looked every inch the dangerous predator he was. When his eyes landed on her, something shifted in his expression. Heat, possession, and something else she couldn't name. "Ready?" he asked. "No, but let's do it anyway." He offered his arm and she took it. Together, they walked toward the Great Hall and the ceremony that would seal their fate. The pack gathered silently as they entered, hundreds of eyes watching their approach. Alara kept her head high, refusing to show fear despite her racing heart. The pack elders waited at the center of the hall, the same ones who'd overseen her trials. The silver-haired one, she'd learned his name was Theron, stepped forward. "We gather to witness the formal marking of Alara Voss as mate to our Alpha King, Kael Draven," he announced. "Let all present bear witness that this union is recognized by pack law and wolf tradition." Kael led Alara to the center of the circle. His hand on her arm was steady, grounding. "Kneel," Theron instructed. She knelt, and Kael knelt behind her. His breath was warm against her exposed shoulder, his presence overwhelming. "By the power of the mate bond and the authority of the pack, I call upon Alpha Kael Draven to claim his mate," Theron intoned. Kael's hand cupped her opposite shoulder, steadying her. Through the bond, she felt his wolf rising to the surface, ancient instincts taking over. "This will hurt," he murmured, so quietly only she could hear. "But I've got you." Then his teeth sank into her shoulder, and pain exploded through her entire body. She'd been hurt before. Broken bones, deep cuts, the agony of forced shifting. But this was different. This was primal, reaching past flesh into something deeper. The mate bond flared brilliant and overwhelming as Kael's wolf claimed her on the most fundamental level. Alara couldn't stop the cry that escaped her lips, or the tears that streamed down her face. Her wolf howled, torn between submission and defiance. And through it all, Kael held her steady. His grip gentle despite the violence of the bite, his presence anchoring her when she thought she might shatter. When he finally released her shoulder, blood streaming from the wound, the bond between them snapped into sharp, crystalline focus. She could feel everything, his satisfaction at completing the claim, his concern for her pain, his wolf's fierce protectiveness, and underneath it all, something that felt dangerously like tenderness. Mara stepped forward immediately, cleaning and bandaging the wound while Theron announced the completion of the ceremony. "The marking is complete. Alara Voss is now Alara Draven, Queen of the Northern Territories and recognized mate to our Alpha King." The pack howled their approval, a chorus of wolf song that shook the rafters. Kael helped Alara to her feet, and she swayed slightly. His arm wrapped around her waist, supporting her. "Almost over," he murmured. "Just need to get through the feast, then you can rest." But as they turned to face the celebrating pack, movement near the entrance caught Alara's attention. A young scout burst into the hall, wild-eyed and breathing hard. "My king!" he gasped. "The Silver Pine pack! They're under attack! The Eastern Coalition! They're already there!" The celebration died instantly. "How many?" Kael's voice was sharp, deadly. "Hundreds, maybe more. They came at dawn, surrounded the territory before anyone could send warning." "Gather the warriors," Kael ordered. "We leave in 10 minutes. Full combat deployment." Chaos erupted as wolves scattered to prepare, but Alara's mind was racing, pieces clicking together. "Wait," she said, loud enough to cut through the noise. "This doesn't make sense," Kael looked at her. "What?" "Think about it. We predicted they'd hit Silverpine or Ironwood. They knew we'd predict that. Rowan and his scouts have been watching them. So why attack the expected target? She grabbed the scout. Did you actually see the attack, or did you hear about it? The scout hesitated. I received a message from another scout. He saw the coalition forces massing. Where is he, this other scout? He didn't make it back. He sent a hawk with the message, then, "It's a trap," Alara said, certainty flooding through her. "They're not attacking Silver Pine. They're making us think they are, drawing our forces out, and then they'll hit here, while we're undermanned and distracted by a marking ceremony that the whole kingdom knew was happening today." Silence fell across the hall as everyone processed her words. "She's right," Rowan's voice came from the entrance. He strode in with 3 of his warriors, all looking grim. "I just received similar intelligence about Ironwood being under attack, but when my scouts went to verify, they found nothing. No coalition forces, no battle. Just an abandoned message station with a dead hawk and a fabricated report." Kale's eyes blazed. "How long do we have?" "If they're coordinating both diversions simultaneously, they're probably already approaching your borders. An hour, maybe less." The hall erupted into action again, but this time with purpose. Warriors arming themselves, scouts deploying to verify Rowan's intelligence, defensive positions being established. Kale turned to Alara, and through the bond she felt his fear. Not for himself, but for her. "Get to the safe rooms, now." "No." "Alara, I'm not hiding while our pack fights. I'm your queen now, marked and recognized. Where you go, I go. You're injured and exhausted. So are half the warriors who'll be fighting." She met his eyes. "I can help coordinate from the command center, manage supply distribution, track warrior movements, relay intelligence. Isn't that why you let me take over logistics?" He looked like he wanted to argue, but there was no time. "Fine. But you stay in the command center. You don't leave it for any reason. Understood?" "Understood." They moved as one, Kyle barking orders while Ilara's mind cataloged everything they'd need. Medical supplies positioned at strategic points, food and water for warriors between shifts, backup weapons, communication protocols. The attack came 40 minutes later, just as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. Coalition forces poured over the eastern ridges like a dark tide, far more than intelligence had predicted. And leading them, directing the assault with tactical precision that spoke of military training, was a figure in dark armor that none of them recognized. The mysterious coalition leader had finally shown themselves, and they'd brought an army to destroy everything Kyle had built. The command center was controlled chaos, maps spread across tables, runners bringing reports every few minutes, warriors cycling through for orders and supplies. Alara stood at the central table, tracking troop movements with colored markers, while her shoulder screamed in protest from the fresh marking wound. She ignored the pain. There wasn't time for it. "Eastern flank reports they're holding," a scout gasped, blood streaming from a gash across his temple. "But barely. They've got some kind of siege weapon, launching fire arrows over the walls." "Get to the healer," Alara ordered, marking the eastern position on her map. "Tell Petra to send water barrels to that section. If they're using fire, we need to be able to put it out fast." The scout nodded and disappeared. Another runner took his place immediately. Southern Border Patrol spotted a second wave moving through the forest, roughly 200 strong. 200? That would bring the total attacking force to over 500. Where had they gotten those numbers? "Send word to the Alpha King. He needs to know they're committing more than we anticipated." Through the mate bond, she felt Kyle's presence on the front lines, his focus, his fury, the lethal calm he maintained while fighting. It was disorienting, feeling his battle rage while trying to coordinate logistics. Rowan burst into the command center, covered in dirt and blood that probably wasn't his. "We've got a problem." "Just one?" Alara didn't look up from the map, because I'm counting at least 7. The armored figure leading them. I got close enough to catch their scent. Rowan's expression was grim. "It's a female. And she smells like Northern Territory." Alara's head snapped up. "What?" "Someone from Kyle's pack, or someone who was." He moved to the map, pointing to where the mystery commander had been spotted. "She knows our defensive positions, our weak points. That's how they're coordinating so effectively." A traitor. They had a traitor who'd sold them out to the coalition. "Marcus," Alara breathed. "He was exiled yesterday. He could have—" "Marcus was male, and this is definitely female." Besides, one day isn't enough time to coordinate an assault this size. Rowan's finger tapped the map. This was planned weeks ago, maybe months. Someone's been feeding the coalition information all along. Before Alara could process that, alarms sounded from the northern wall. She rushed to the window overlooking the battlements and felt her stomach drop. The second wave wasn't 200 wolves, it was 500, and they were already scaling the walls with coordinated precision that spoke of military training. They lied, she said, ice flooding her veins. The scout's report was wrong, or the scout was working with them. We need to pull back, Rowan said urgently. Regroup at the inner keep. If we abandon the walls, they'll pour into the civilian quarters. Women, children, elders, they'll be slaughtered. Alara's mind raced through options, none of them good. We need to hold long enough to evacuate non-combatants. There's no time. Then we make time. She grabbed a runner. Get to the nursery and the elder quarters. Start evacuating through the mountain tunnels. Priority to those who can't fight. The tunnels haven't been used in years. They might be blocked. Then clear them. Go! More runners came with worse news. The eastern flank was collapsing. The southern patrol had been overrun. Coalition forces were pouring through gaps in their defenses. The command center itself might be compromised within the hour. Through the bond, Alara felt Kael's sudden spike of alarm. He knew something had gone catastrophically wrong. She felt his instinct to fall back, to protect the keep, warring with his need to eliminate threats. And beneath it all, his fear for her. She sent reassurance through the bond, as much as she could manage while her own heart hammered with terror. They were losing. Against a force this size, this well-coordinated, even Kael's legendary strength wouldn't be enough. Alara? Rowan's voice was quiet, serious. If this goes bad, if they breach the inner keep, you need to run. The mate bond makes you a target. They'll use you against Kael. I'm not abandoning my pack. It's not your pack yet. Not really. You've been here less than 2 weeks. I was marked this morning. That makes it my pack. She met his eyes. I'm not running, Rowan. Something shifted in his expression, respect mixed with something deeper she couldn't identify. Then I'm staying with you. Someone needs to watch your back. Before she could argue, Kael crashed through the door with 3 of his senior warriors, all bloodied and furious. We're falling back to the inner keep, he announced. The walls are lost. The evacuation, Alara started, is proceeding, but slowly, too slowly. His eyes found hers, and through the bond she felt his conflict. I need you to leave, now. Take the mountain tunnels with the other non-combatants. No, that wasn't a request. And I'm not a non-combatant. Alara straightened, ignoring the pain radiating from her shoulder. I'm your queen, your mate, and I'm staying. Alara, she's right, Rowan interrupted. If she runs, it'll look like the Alpha King's mate abandoned the pack in their darkest hour. The survivors would never forgive it. Neither would you. Kael's jaw clenched. Fine. But you stay in the inner keep command center, behind 3 layers of defensive warriors. And if I give the order to run, you run. No arguments. Agreed. They fell back in stages, warriors covering each retreat while Alara coordinated the evacuation of civilians. The nursery was emptied first, mothers carrying crying pups through ancient tunnels that smelled of earth and old fear. Elders followed, some carried by younger pack members, others walking with grim determination. The inner keep was built like a fortress within a fortress. Thick walls, narrow passages, defensible positions. If they could hold here long enough for reinforcements to arrive from allied packs, but reinforcements were days away, and they had hours at most. The coalition forces surrounded the inner keep as darkness fell. Torches illuminated the night, turning the battlefield into something from a nightmare. The mysterious armored commander stood at the center of their formation, visible now in the firelight. She was tall, built like a warrior, and when she removed her helmet, gasps echoed across the northern defenders. Alara didn't recognize her, but clearly others did. That's impossible, one of Kael's warriors whispered. She's dead. She died 5 years ago. Who is she? Alara demanded. Kael's expression had gone blank, the kind of blank that meant he was feeling too much and forcing it down. Her name is Sasha Blackwood. She was my father's second in command, and she was supposed to be dead. What happened? My father executed her for treason when I was 18. She'd questioned his increasingly paranoid orders, tried to protect pack members he'd targeted as potential traitors. He had her killed publicly, made an example of her. His hands clenched into fists. I saw her die. Her body was burned according to tradition. Clearly not thoroughly enough, Rowan muttered. Sasha's voice rang out across the battlefield, amplified by some kind of magic. Kyle Draven, your father was a monster, and you're no better. You continue his legacy of violence and oppression, destroying packs and taking what isn't yours. She's talking about the Voss pack, Alara realized, about what you did to my father's territory, among others. Kale moved to the battlements, and Sasha's eyes locked onto him. I've absorbed 7 territories in 5 years. All of them were weak, vulnerable, risks to our collective security. But to wolves like Sasha, that makes me a conqueror, not a protector. Are you? The question escaped before Alara could stop it. A protector? He looked at her, and for once she saw uncertainty in his winter storm eyes. I thought I was. Now I'm not sure. Sasha continued her speech, clearly performing for both armies. I survived your father's execution through allies who helped me fake my death. I fled east, spent years building support, convincing other packs that the Northern Territories under Draven rule was a threat to us all. And now, we've come to end your reign of terror. That's quite a story, Kael called back. Tell me, how many packs did you slaughter to build your coalition? How many innocents died in your righteous crusade? Fewer than you've killed. The packs that joined me did so willingly, seeking protection from tyrants like you. Is that what you told them? Or did you give them the same choice I give, join or die? His voice carried harsh truth. We're not so different, Sasha. We both do what we think is necessary for our people's survival. I don't murder my own pack members for questioning me. No, you just fake your death and come back years later with an army to destroy everything they've built. Kael's fury was building, bleeding through into his voice. You want to talk about murder? How many northern wolves died tonight because you convinced yourself this was justice? Silence fell across the battlefield. Alara could see doubt flickering across some of the coalition wolves' faces. They'd been told they were liberators, heroes, but the smoking ruins around them and the bodies of both sides littering the ground told a different story. Sasha's expression hardened. I offer you one chance, Kael. Surrender yourself for trial before the Coalition Council. Face justice for your crimes, and will allow the Northern Pack to survive under new leadership. What about his mate? Rowan called out before Kael could answer. The queen you've terrorized tonight, what happens to her? The Voss girl? Sasha's smile was cold. She's a victim of Kael's ambition, forced into a mate bond with the man who murdered her family. We'll free her from that imprisonment. By killing him, you mean? Alara stepped forward, ignoring Kael's hand reaching to pull her back. You think I'll thank you for that? You should. He destroyed your pack. He did. And I hate him for it. But you know what I hate more? Being treated like I'm too stupid or weak to make my own choices. Alara's voice rang clear across the battlefield. You didn't come here to save me. You came here for revenge dressed up as justice. Don't pretend otherwise. The mate bond has confused you. The mate bond showed me exactly who Kael Draven is. Brutal, pragmatic, and absolutely ruthless when he thinks it's necessary. But you know what else I've seen? Him exiling a warrior for threatening me. Him trusting me with real responsibility despite having every reason not to. Him protecting the weak members of his pack even while fighting a war. She paused, letting her words sink in. He's not his father, and killing him won't make you any different from the tyrant you claim to be fighting. Murmurs rippled through both armies. Alara could feel eyes on her. Northern wolves shocked that she'd defend Kael. Coalition wolves uncertain about their righteous cause. Sasha's expression twisted with rage. You know nothing about what his father did. I know he killed someone you cared about, maybe loved. And you've spent 5 years planning revenge, building an army, convincing yourself that destroying everything he built would make it right. Alara's shoulder throbbed, but she stayed upright. But it won't. Killing Kael won't bring back whoever you lost. It'll just create more orphans, more widows, more wolves carrying the same rage you've carried. When does it end? When tyrants stop rising to power. And who decides who's a tyrant? You? The Coalition Council you've assembled? Alara shook her head. Power doesn't make someone a monster. What they do with it does. Kael has done terrible things, I won't deny that. But so have you tonight. So where's the line? Silence stretched taut. Then Kael spoke, his voice carrying across the battlefield with alpha authority. Sasha, you want me to face justice? Fine. I'll submit to trial before a neutral council, not your coalition, but representatives from unclaimed territories. I'll answer for every decision I've made, every pack I've absorbed, every wolf I've killed. He paused. But only if you agree to the same. Stand trial for tonight's attack, for the packs you've destroyed building your coalition, for every life lost in your crusade. Shock rippled through the coalition ranks. Sasha's second-in-command leaned in to whisper something urgent. You'd surrender? Sasha asked, disbelief clear in her voice. I'd submit to judgment. There's a difference. Kael's hand found Alara's, and she felt his resolve through the bond. But if you refuse, if you insist on settling this through violence, then we fight until one side is destroyed. And I promise you, Sasha, I won't go down easy. The cost in lives will be catastrophic for both our forces. He's buying time, Rowan murmured to Alara, hoping reinforcements arrive before she calls his bluff. It's not a bluff, Alara whispered back. He means it. Through the bond, she felt the truth of it. Kael was tired, not of fighting, but of what the fighting cost. Of being his father's son, trapped in cycles of violence that never seemed to end. Sasha studied him for a long moment. How do I know this isn't a trap? You don't. Same as I don't know your coalition won't execute me the moment I surrender. Kael's grip on Alara's hand tightened. We're both taking a risk. But maybe, just maybe, there's a way to end this without more bloodshed. And if the council finds you guilty, then I accept their judgment, whatever it is. More murmurs from both sides. Alara could feel the shift in energy. Wolves on both sides were exhausted, traumatized, questioning whether this battle was worth dying for. Sasha looked ready to agree. Her second-in-command was nodding, clearly seeing the strategic advantage of avoiding more casualties. Then a new voice cut through the night, female, familiar, dripping with contempt. How touching! The mighty Alpha King brought low by love. Alara's blood turned to ice. She knew that voice. A figure emerged from the coalition ranks, pushing through to stand beside Sasha. She was tall, blonde, beautiful in the way predators were beautiful. And when her eyes locked onto Alara, they held nothing but vicious satisfaction. Hello, little sister, she said. Did you miss me? The world tilted sideways. Vera, Alara's voice came out strangled. You're dead. Father said you died in the raids. Father lied, as he lied about so many things. Vera Voss smiled, and it was her smile, the same one Alara remembered from childhood, before their relationship had curdled into resentment and rivalry. I wasn't killed in raids. I was exiled for questioning his authority, for suggesting we actually defend our borders instead of letting them become porous as a sieve. That's not possible. I would have known. You were 12 when I died, hardly old enough to question Father's story. Vera's eyes flickered to Kael. And now look at you, mated to the man who finished what Father started, the complete destruction of our pack. Kael's entire body had gone rigid. You're the traitor. You've been feeding intelligence to the coalition. Traitor? I prefer strategic advisor. Vera's smile widened. I've spent years learning everything about Northern Territory defenses, where the weak points are, which warriors can be bought, how supply chains work. And when Sasha approached me about joining her coalition, I saw an opportunity for justice. Justice? Alara felt something breaking inside her chest. You helped orchestrate an attack that killed dozens of our people. Our people? Vera's laugh was sharp. They stopped being our people when they swore loyalty to the man who murdered our father. Or have you forgotten that part, little sister? Have you forgotten Father begging for mercy while Kael Draven ripped his throat out? Father challenged him to single combat. After Kael invaded our territory and gave him no choice, it was conquer or die, and Father chose to die with honor rather than submit. Vera's composure cracked, showing the rage beneath. And you let him mark you, let him claim you like property. You disgust me. The words hit like physical blows. Every insecurity Alara had felt, every moment of doubt about accepting the mate bond, Vera had just weaponized them all. I had no choice, Alara said, hating how weak it sounded. Everyone has a choice. You chose survival over honor. You chose to spread your legs for our father's murderer. Kyle moved so fast, Alara barely saw it. One moment he was beside her, the next he had Vera by the throat, lifted off the ground. Say another word about my mate, he growled, voice gone full wolf, and I'll finish what I should have done to your whole treacherous bloodline. Kale, don't! Alara grabbed his arm. She's my sister! She's a traitor who helped orchestrate tonight's attack, who sold out every wolf in this territory. His eyes were pure wolf now, human control slipping. She deserves to die. Maybe. But not like this. Not without trial. Alara forced herself between them, physically blocking his killing strike. You just offered Sasha a trial. Offer Vera the same, or your word means nothing. Through the bond, she felt his fury. At Vera, at himself, at the impossible situation. But beneath it, that spark of something that might be respect for her standing her ground. Slowly, Kyle lowered Vera to the ground, but his hand stayed around her throat. She stands trial with Sasha. For treason, conspiracy, and complicity in mass murder. Agreed, Sasha said, though she looked as shocked as everyone else by Vera's revelation. I wasn't aware of the full extent of her personal motivations. You used me, Vera spat at Sasha. You said this was about justice. It is, but not your vendetta. Sasha's expression had gone cold. I wanted to end tyranny. You wanted revenge. Those aren't the same thing. Vera struggled in Kyle's grip. Let me go, you bastard. Not a chance. He looked at Sasha. Send for neutral arbitrators. 3 alphas from unclaimed territories who have no stake in this conflict. They'll judge all of us. Me for my conquests, you for your coalition's actions, and Vera for her treason. How long? Sasha asked. A week to gather them. They'll hear evidence, testimony from both sides, and their verdict is binding. We all agree to accept it, whatever it is. It was insane. But somehow, standing on a battlefield surrounded by bodies and ruins, it felt like the only sane option left. Agreed, Sasha said finally. 1 week. Ceasefire until the trial concludes. Ceasefire, Kyle confirmed. The tension didn't dissolve. It shifted. Coalition forces began pulling back to establish camps outside the damaged walls. Northern wolves watched them warily, weapons still drawn, trust non-existent. But the immediate threat of annihilation had passed. Kale dragged Vera toward the dungeons, and Alara followed despite her exhaustion. Her shoulder was bleeding again, soaking through the bandages. Her legs felt like water. But she needed to talk to her sister, needed answers. They threw Vera in a cell reinforced with silver. She immediately tested the bars, then hissed as the metal burned her palms. Comfortable? Kyle asked coldly. Go to hell. Already there, thanks. He turned to leave, but Alara stayed. Why? She asked her sister. Why didn't you tell me you were alive? Why let me think you were dead all those years? Vera looked at her, and for a moment, Alara saw the sister she'd idolized as a child. Then the moment passed. Because you were father's favorite. His perfect little daughter who never questioned, never challenged. You would have told him I survived, and he would have hunted me down. Vera gripped the bars despite the burn. I had to stay dead to stay alive. I wasn't his favorite. He barely noticed me. He noticed you enough to keep you close, to protect you from the politics and violence. Me? He threw me to the wolves, literally, the moment I disagreed with him. Bitterness dripped from every word. You got to stay innocent, Alara. You got to believe father was just weak, not actively malicious. I didn't have that luxury. So you decided to burn it all down, kill everyone who ever served our pack? I decided to stop pretending family loyalty meant anything. Father exiled me. Our brothers didn't lift a finger to help me. And you were too young to even know I needed help. Vera's eyes hardened. The pack I'm loyal to now is the coalition. They gave me purpose when our family gave me nothing. They used you. We used each other. That's how alliances work. She paused. How does it feel, little sister? Being used by Kyle Draven? Because that's all you are to him. A political tool and a warm body. Alara felt Kale stiffen behind her. Through the bond, his fury was volcanic. You're wrong, Alara said quietly. Whatever Kale and I have, it's complicated and messy and probably doomed. But it's real. The mate bond doesn't lie about recognition, even if it doesn't guarantee love. The mate bond is a biological accident. It means nothing. It means everything. It's the only thing that kept him from killing me outright when he realized what a liability a mate would be. Alara met her sister's eyes. We're bound now, for life. And unlike you, I don't run from bonds just because they're difficult. Vera's laugh was brittle. We'll see how long that lasts. When the trial comes, when you hear every detail of what he did to our pack, every murder, every atrocity, we'll see if your precious bond survives. Come on, Kael said, his hand gentle on Alara's uninjured shoulder. She's not worth it. They left Vera alone in her cell, but her words followed Alara like ghosts. The inner keep was chaos. Wounded wolves being treated, families reuniting, warriors standing down from combat readiness. Mara descended on Alara the moment she saw her, clucking disapprovingly at the blood-soaked bandages. You tore the marking wound open, the healer scolded, steering her toward the medical wing. Sit, now. Alara sat, too exhausted to argue. Kael hovered nearby, bloodied and battered himself, but refusing treatment until she was seen to. You should have told me about Vera, Alara said, as Mara cleaned and rebandaged her shoulder. That she survived. I didn't know she survived. Your father told me she died. Kael's expression was unreadable. He must have helped her fake it, then spread the story she was killed by raiders. Why would he do that? Because exiling his own daughter for disagreeing with him would have looked weak, but having her die heroically defending the pack, that made him seem sympathetic. Kael's jaw clenched. Your father was better at politics than I gave him credit for. He was still weak where it mattered. Maybe. Or maybe he was just trapped in the same cycles the rest of us are. Kael finally sat down, letting Mara examine the gash across his ribs. The trial will be brutal. Sasha will present every questionable decision I've made, every pack I've absorbed, and Vera will make sure you hear every detail of your father's death. I know. It might break the bond. If you hear everything and decide you can't live with it, the mate bond has been rejected before. It's rare, agonizing, but possible. Alara looked at him. Is that what you want? I don't know what I want anymore. His honesty was brutal. Part of me wants to keep you. Consequences be damned. Part of me knows I'm poison for you, that you'd be better off without me. And part of me is just so tired of making impossible choices that I can't think clearly. Through the bond, she felt all of it. His exhaustion, his conflict, his genuine care for her tangled up with his ruthless pragmatism. We have a week, she said. Let's get through the trial. Then we'll figure out what comes next. And if the verdict is execution, then I guess we're both screwed because the mate bond doesn't care about neutral counsels or justice. She managed a weak smile. We're stuck with each other, Kael, for better or worse. Mostly worse so far. Give it time. Maybe we'll hit for better eventually. Mara finished with both of them, prescribing rest and proper food, but there was no time for either. Rowan appeared with news that the arbitrators had been contacted and would arrive within 3 days. Until then, both sides would maintain the ceasefire but remain armed and alert. This is fragile, Rowan warned. One wrong move, one hot-headed wolf looking for revenge, and it all collapses. Then we make sure no one makes that wrong move, Kael said. He looked drained, more human than Alpha King. I need to address the pack. They need to know what's happening. The gathering was somber. Northern wolves filled the great hall, many bearing wounds, all bearing trauma. Kael stood before them, and Alara stood beside him despite her exhaustion. Tonight we survived, he said, voice carrying to every corner. But survival came at a cost. We lost good wolves, warriors, healers, scouts. Families have been broken. Our home has been damaged, and in 3 days I will stand trial for decisions that led us here. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Fear, uncertainty, anger. Some of you are questioning whether following me is worth this price, whether my leadership has brought more harm than good. Those are fair questions. Kael's eyes swept the room. I've made hard choices, absorbed weak packs to strengthen our borders, executed traitors to maintain order, demanded absolute loyalty because I believed that was the only way to keep us safe. It was the only way, someone called out. Maybe. Or maybe I've become so focused on strength that I forgot what we're supposed to be strong for. He glanced at Alara. My mate, your queen, reminded me tonight that power doesn't make someone a monster. What they do with it does. I've used my power to conquer, to control, to eliminate threats. I told myself it was necessary. And maybe some of it was, but not all of it. Silence fell, heavy and expectant. The trial will determine if I've crossed lines that can't be uncrossed, and I will accept their verdict, whatever it is. Kael's voice hardened. But until then, I am still your alpha, and I ask you to trust me one more time. Trust that this ceasefire is our best chance for survival. Trust that facing judgment with honor is better than fighting to the last wolf standing. Trust that there's a way forward that doesn't require us to become the monsters our enemies claim we are. And if the verdict is death, someone asked, then I die knowing I tried to do better in the end, and you, all of you, will survive under new leadership. Probably better leadership. He paused. But I'm hoping it doesn't come to that. The pack dispersed slowly, conversations low and worried, but there was no open rebellion, no calls for him to reject the trial and fight to the death. It was something. Alara and Kael made their way back to his chambers, their chambers now by tradition. The rooms felt different with both of them there, the space shrinking around their shared presence. You should rest, Kael said, gesturing to the bed. You're dead on your feet. So are you. I need to review reports, check on wounded warriors. Kael. She stopped him with a hand on his arm. The reports can wait an hour. You're no good to anyone if you collapse. He looked ready to argue, then seemed to deflate. You're right. I don't know how to stop moving. If I stop, I have to think about everything that happened, everything that's coming. Then don't think, just rest. They lay down together, both fully clothed on top of the covers. It was awkward and strange and yet somehow natural, the mate bond easing them into proximity despite everything. Alara? Kael's voice was quiet in the darkness. Yeah? Thank you for defending me tonight. You didn't have to. I know. Then why did you? She thought about it, about all the complicated feelings tangled up in her chest. Because someone needed to remind both sides that there are more than two options. Fight or surrender aren't the only choices. Sometimes there's a third way, messy and imperfect, but better than mutual destruction. You sound like you've thought about this before. I watched my father make binary choices for years, strong or weak, submit or fight. And every choice backed him further into a corner until he had nowhere left to go but death. She rolled to face him. I won't make that mistake. There's always another option if you're willing to look for it. Kael's hand found hers in the darkness. I'm glad the bond chose you. Even with everything else falling apart, that feels right. Ask me again after the trial. I might feel differently when I hear the full details of what you did. Fair enough. They drifted off together, exhaustion finally claiming them both. And for a few hours there was peace. It didn't last. Alara woke to alarms and shouting. She bolted upright, Kael already on his feet and moving toward the door. What's happening? She demanded. I don't know. A runner burst in, wild-eyed. My king, the dungeons, someone broke Vera out, Kael swore viciously. How? The cells were silver reinforced, someone from the coalition. They slipped through our patrols, used some kind of acid to melt the lock. Where is she now? Gone. She and her rescuer vanished before we could stop them. Kael and Alara raced to the dungeons. The cell that had held Vera was empty, the lock a melted ruin. And on the wall, scratched in what looked like claw marks, was a message. The trial was always a distraction. By the time you realize what we're really after, it'll be too late. V. What does that mean? Alara breathed. Kael's expression went from fury to horror in an instant. The evacuation tunnels. We sent the non-combatants through them hours ago. They're still making their way to the safe houses in the mountains. Vera knows about those tunnels. She grew up in Voss territory. We use the same network. Their eyes met, identical realization dawning. They're not after me, Kael said. They're after leverage. If they take hostages, children, elders, the most vulnerable members of our pack, they can force any verdict they want from the trial. Alara was already running. How long would it take them to reach the tunnels from here? If they move fast, 20 minutes, maybe less. And how long to reach the refugees? We sent them out 2 hours ago. They're slow, carrying children, helping elders. They might be halfway to the safe houses by now. Or they might still be in the tunnels, trapped. They sprinted through the keep, gathering warriors as they went. Rowan met them at the tunnel entrance, already armed and ready. "I heard," he said grimly. "I'm coming with you." "This could be a trap," Kyle warned. "Probably is. But we can't leave those people undefended." Rowan checked his weapons. "How many are we taking?" 20. Any more and we leave the keep vulnerable if this really is a diversion." They plunged into the tunnels, narrow passages carved through mountain stone generations ago. The darkness was absolute beyond their torches, the air stale and thick. And somewhere ahead, Alara knew, her sister was hunting the most vulnerable members of their pack. The pack she'd sworn to protect when she'd accepted Kael's mark. "Move fast," Kael ordered, "and stay alert. If they've set traps—" An explosion rocked the tunnel behind them, collapsing the entrance in a cascade of rock and dust. They were sealed in. And ahead, in the darkness, something laughed. Dust choked the air, making it impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. Alara pressed her sleeve against her mouth, trying not to cough and give away their position to whoever was laughing in the darkness. Kael's hand found hers, squeezing once. Through the bond, she felt his wolf rising, ready to hunt, ready to kill. "Spread out," he ordered quietly. "Watch for tripwires, pressure plates, anything that looks disturbed. They want us bunched together for maximum casualties." The warriors fanned out as much as the narrow tunnel allowed. Rowan moved to Alara's side, his presence solid and reassuring in ways that made the mate bond flare with Kael's jealousy despite the danger. "Not the time," she muttered to both of them. "Agreed," Rowan said. Kael said nothing, but his grip on her hand loosened slightly. They moved deeper into the tunnels, following the path the refugees would have taken. The laughter had stopped, replaced by an oppressive silence broken only by their footsteps and breathing. Then they found the first body. It was one of their warriors, a young male who'd been assigned to guard the rear of the evacuation. His throat had been torn out with brutal efficiency, the kill recent enough that blood still pooled beneath him. Single attacker, Kael assessed, crouching beside the body. Fast, precise. Knew exactly where to strike. "Vera," Alara said, recognizing her sister's fighting style. Their father had trained them both, but Vera had always been the lethal one. Quick kills, no wasted movement. "She's hurting us," Rowan observed. "This kill is fresh. She wanted us to find it, to know she's ahead of us." "Why?" one of the warriors asked. "Why lead us deeper into the tunnels?" Alara's mind raced through possibilities, none of them good. Then it clicked. The fork. There's a fork in the tunnel about half a mile ahead. One path leads to the mountain safe houses, the other to an old mining shaft that's been abandoned for decades. If she can force the refugees down the wrong path, they'll be trapped in a dead end with no escape. Kael swore. How long since the evacuation started? 3 hours? Then they might have already reached the fork. He broke into a run, the rest following. "We need to catch up before—" Another explosion rocked the tunnel ahead, this one smaller but more targeted. The ceiling groaned ominously, cracked spiderwebbing across stone that had stood for generations. "It's collapsing," someone shouted. "No, it's controlled." Alara studied the cracks, seeing the pattern. They're sealing specific sections, creating choke points. For what purpose? She didn't get to answer. Coalition wolves poured out of a side passage they'd passed without noticing, attacking with coordinated precision that spoke of military training. The tunnel erupted into chaos. Kael shifted mid-lunge, his wolf form massive and terrifying in the confined space. He tore into the attackers with savage efficiency, but there were too many and the space was too tight for effective combat. Alara didn't have time to shift. A coalition wolf came at her, jaws aimed for her throat. She ducked, drove her shoulder into his gut, and used his momentum to slam him into the tunnel wall. He crumpled. Rowan fought beside her, protecting her flank while Kael carved a path forward. The northern warriors held their own, but they were outnumbered, and fighting in terrain that favored ambush over strength. "Fall back!" Kael's mental command cut through the chaos. Alpha authority, impossible to ignore. "Regroup it." His order cut off as something silver and sharp embedded itself in his shoulder. He howled, wolf form stumbling, and Alara felt his pain through the bond like it was her own. Kael! She pushed through the fighting, reaching him as he shifted back to human, the silver bolt protruding from his flesh. His face was gray with pain. It's poisoned, he gasped. Can feel it spreading. Where's Mara when you need her? Rowan muttered, covering them while Alara examined the wound. The bolt had to come out, but pulling it would cause more damage. Leave it in, and the poison would kill him. No good options. Story of her life lately. This is going to hurt, she warned Kael. Everything hurts. Just do it. She gripped the bolt, said a prayer to anything listening, and yanked. Kael's scream echoed through the tunnel. Blood poured from the wound more than there should be. The poison was preventing clotting. She tore fabric from her shirt, packing it against the injury with pressure that made him curse viciously. That's for making me wear that ridiculous red dress, she said, trying to keep her voice light despite her terror. Noted. You can pick your own clothes from now on. His breathing was ragged. The refugees can wait 2 minutes while we stop you from bleeding out. Alara, no. I'm not losing you in a tunnel because you're too stubborn to accept help. She met his eyes. We do this together or not at all, remember? Through the bond, she felt his resistance warring with his pragmatism. Finally, he nodded. 2 minutes, then we move. The coalition wolves had fallen back, regrouping for another assault. But something was wrong. They weren't pressing their advantage. It was like they were stalling. It's a distraction, Ilar realized. They're keeping us here while Vera gets to the refugees. Then let's stop being distracted. Kael forced himself upright, swaying but steady. Rowan, take half the warriors and find another route to the fork. We'll push through here and draw their attention. That's suicide with a poison wound. Good thing I'm too mean to die easily. Kael shifted again despite the injury, his wolf form smaller than usual, but no less dangerous. Move. Now! They split up. Rowan's group disappeared down a side tunnel Alara hadn't noticed, while Kael's warriors charged forward into the coalition ambush. It should have been slaughter. Instead, Kael fought like something possessed. Every movement was precise despite the poison weakening him, every strike calculated for maximum damage. He didn't fight to win, he fought to terrify, to make the coalition wolves question whether killing him was worth dying themselves. It worked. The coalition forces broke, scattering deeper into the tunnels. Don't pursue, Kael ordered, shifting back to human. He was breathing hard, sweat pouring down his face. The poison was spreading. We need to reach the fork. They ran through darkness and dust, following the path the refugees would have taken. Alara could hear them now, crying children, worried mothers, the shuffle of elderly wolves moving as fast as they could. And ahead of them, Vera's voice rang clear. Keep moving! The safe path is this way. Follow me! No! Alara shouted, pushing past Kael despite his attempt to hold her back. Don't listen to her! She's leading you to the mining shaft. It's a trap! The refugees hesitated, caught between two voices they should trust, their queen and the sister of their queen who'd supposedly died years ago. Vera stood at the fork, torch held high, looking every inch the savior. Alara's been compromised by the mate bond. Kael Draven is controlling her. Don't let him use her to trap you. I'm not being controlled, Alara said, moving slowly into view. The refugees stared at her, bloodied, exhausted, but standing firm. Vera is working with the coalition. She helped orchestrate tonight's attack. She wants you trapped so she can use you as leverage. Lies, Vera spat. I'm trying to save you from the tyrant who destroyed our pack. Our pack was destroyed because Father was weak and you were vengeful. Alara's voice cracked. I loved you. I mourned you, and all this time you were alive, plotting revenge, building an army to burn everything down. Better to burn than to submit, says the woman who submitted to the coalition the moment they offered her a way to hurt Kael. Alara stepped closer, aware of every eye on her. You don't care about these people. You care about making Kael suffer. And if dozens of innocents die in the process, that's just acceptable losses to you. Vera's expression twisted. You think you know me? You were a child when I left. I was a child who worshipped her big sister, who wanted to be just like you, strong, brave, uncompromising. Alara's throat tightened. But you're not those things. You're just broken and angry and determined to make everyone else hurt as much as you do. Better broken than owned. I'm not owned. I'm bound. There's a difference. Alara glanced back at Kael, still standing despite the poison coursing through him. The mate bond is complicated and sometimes terrible, but it's honest. It shows you exactly who someone is, their violence and their compassion, their cruelty and their care. And Kael might be brutal, but he's not a liar. Can you say the same? Silence stretched taut. The refugees looked between the two sisters, uncertain who to believe. Then a small voice piped up from the crowd. She stopped Marcus from hurting people, fixed the kitchen so we had enough food, stood up to the Alpha King even though she was scared. It was a child, couldn't be more than 8 years old, clutching her mother's hand. My mama says the new queen is brave, the girl continued. Are you brave, or are you a liar? Vera stared at the child, something cracking in her expression. I'm trying to save you. By trapping us in a mine shaft? Another voice called out, one of the elderly wolves. We're old, girl, not stupid. We know these tunnels. We know where you're trying to lead us. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the refugees. They began moving toward Alara, away from Vera. No, wait, you don't understand. Vera's composure shattered completely. She's mated to the man who killed our father. How can you trust her? Because she stayed when she could have run, a mother holding an infant said quietly. Because she fought beside us instead of hiding behind warriors. Because when my son was hurt in the attack, she made sure supplies reached the healers, even though she was injured herself. One by one, the refugees chose, and one by one, they moved to stand behind Alara. Vera looked at her sister across the growing distance, and for a moment, Alara saw the girl she'd once known, scared, alone, desperate to matter. It didn't have to be like this, Alara said softly. You could have come home. I would have helped you. There is no home. Draven destroyed it. But the fight had gone out of Vera's voice. And you chose him over family. I chose survival. I chose building something new instead of clinging to something dead. Alara took a step forward. Come with us. Face trial fairly. Maybe there's still a way forward that doesn't end in more death. For a heartbeat, she thought Vera might accept. Might choose redemption over revenge. Then coalition wolves poured out of the mining shaft behind Vera, dozens of them, armed and ready. I don't need redemption, Vera said, her voice hollow. I need justice. And if you won't help me get it, then you're just another obstacle. The coalition wolves charged, but this time Alara was ready. Shield formation! Protect the refugees! The northern warriors moved instantly, creating a barrier between the attackers and the vulnerable pack members. Kael, barely able to stand, shifted anyway and threw himself into the front line. The tunnel became a meat grinder. Alara fought beside mothers protecting children, elders wielding whatever weapons they could find, warriors making last stands to buy seconds for others to escape. It was chaos and terror and desperate courage all mixed together. And through it all, Vera watched from the back of the coalition forces, her expression unreadable. Then Rowan's group hit the coalition from behind. The timing was perfect, catching them between two forces, collapsing their formation. The coalition wolves broke, scattering back toward the mining shaft in disorganized retreat. Vera was the last to run, and she ran alone. Let her go, Kael gasped, his wolf form bleeding from a dozen wounds. The poison had him swaying on his feet. Get the refugees to safety. That's priority. You need a healer. I need you to get these people out of here before more coalition forces arrive. He shifted back to human, naked and bloody, and still impossibly commanding. Please, Alara, I can't protect them like this, but you can. She wanted to argue, wanted to stay and make sure he didn't die from poison or blood loss or sheer stubbornness. But he was right. The refugees needed leadership, needed someone to guide them through the remaining tunnels to actual safety. Don't you dare die while I'm gone, she ordered. Wouldn't dream of it. His smile was weak but genuine. Go. I'll be here when you get back. Through the bond, she felt his determination to survive. It would have to be enough. Alara led the refugees through the correct tunnel path, Rowan and half the warriors flanking them while the other half stayed with Kael. The journey took an hour. Too long, too exposed, every shadow potentially hiding more attackers. But they made it. The mountain's safe houses were exactly that. Fortified shelters built into the peaks, accessible only through the tunnel network or by treacherous climbing. The refugees poured into them like water finding level, exhausted and traumatized but alive. Get them food, water, medical attention for the wounded, Alara ordered the staff maintaining the shelters, and send runners back through the tunnels with healing supplies. The Alpha King is injured, poisoned silver. He needs treatment immediately. The staff scattered to obey. Alara wanted to go back herself, but Rowan stopped her. "You're dead on your feet," he said gently, "and your shoulder is bleeding again. Let the healers go, they know what they're doing. He could be dying, and you collapsing from exhaustion won't help him." Rowan guided her to a bench, forcing her to sit. "Besides, Kael's survived worse. Trust him to survive this." The mate bond hummed with Kael's presence, weak, pained, but still there. Rowan was right. She needed to trust. "Thank you," she said to Rowan, "for your help tonight. We wouldn't have made it without you." "You would have found a way. You always do." He studied her face. "You know, when I first heard about Kael claiming a mate from a conquered pack, I expected to find someone broken. Instead, I found someone who might actually be strong enough to change him." "I'm not trying to change him, aren't you? Every time you stand up to him, every time you choose compassion over cruelty, you're showing him a different way." Rowan smiled. "He's watching you, learning from you, even if he doesn't realize it yet. Or I'm just delaying the inevitable. When the trial happens, when everyone hears what he's done—" She trailed off, unable to finish the thought. "Then you'll make a choice, and whatever you choose, I'll respect it." He paused. "But for what it's worth, I think you've already chosen. The mate bond might have forced recognition, but staying, fighting for these people, that was all you." Before Alara could respond, runners arrived with news. Kael was alive, being treated, the poison countered before it could do permanent damage. Relief flooded through her so intensely she had to brace herself against it. "Told you," Rowan said. "Too stubborn to die." The next 2 days passed in a blur. The ceasefire held despite Vera's attempted hostage-taking. Sasha, upon hearing about the mining shaft trap, publicly denounced Vera's methods and expelled her from the coalition leadership. "I wanted justice, not terrorism," Sasha announced to both armies. "Vera Voss acted without authority and against our principles. She is no longer under coalition protection." It was a political move, distancing herself from the failed ambush, but it had real consequences. Vera was now alone, hunted by both sides, her alliance with the coalition shattered. Alara should have felt satisfaction. Instead, she just felt sad. The neutral arbitrators arrived on schedule. 3 alphas from territories that had remained independent from both northern rule and coalition control. They were older, experienced, and completely unimpressed by either Kael's reputation or Sasha's rhetoric. The trial was held in neutral ground, the old border fort between northern and western territories. Both armies watched from a distance while the principals gathered inside. Kael stood straight despite his injuries, facing his accusers with the same cold composure he'd shown the night he'd claimed Alara. Sasha stood across from him, equally composed, and between them the 3 arbitrators waited to hear evidence. "We will judge 3 matters," the eldest arbitrator announced. "The legitimacy of Kael Draven's territorial expansion, the justification for Sasha Blackwood's coalition campaign, and the culpability of Vera Voss for war crimes against both parties." "Where's Vera?" one of the other arbitrators asked. "In the wind," Kael said, "last seen fleeing into eastern territories. We have scouts searching, but she's proving difficult to track." "Convenient." "It is what it is." Kael's expression didn't change. "Should we wait for her capture or proceed?" "We proceed. Her absence doesn't absolve her crimes or prevent judgment." The elder gestured. "Sasha Blackwood, present your case against Kael Draven." What followed was 3 hours of testimony detailing every pack Kael had absorbed, every alpha he'd challenged, every wolf who'd died in his territorial expansion. Sasha was thorough, methodical, painting a picture of systematic conquest disguised as necessary security measures. Alara listened to it all, the death toll, the displaced families, the broken alliances. And through the bond, she felt Kael's steady acknowledgement of every accusation. He wasn't denying any of it. When Sasha finished, the arbitrators turned to Kael. "Do you dispute these facts?" "No, everything she said is accurate." His voice was level. "I challenged 7 alphas in 5 years. 6 died in single combat. One submitted and was allowed to keep a subordinate position in the combined pack. I absorbed their territories, integrated their pack members, and established northern dominance across what is now the largest continuous wolf territory in the kingdom. And you claim this was justified? I claim it was necessary. Each of those packs was weak, vulnerable to Eastern Coalition expansion. Separately, they would have fallen one by one. Together, under centralized leadership, they created a defensive barrier strong enough to resist invasion. That barrier was bought with blood, Sasha interjected. All barriers are bought with blood. The question is whether the cost was worth the protection gained. Kael looked at the arbitrators. I'm not claiming to be noble or heroic. I'm a conqueror. But I'm a conqueror who created stability where there was chaos, strength where there was weakness. The wolves under my rule are safer now than they were under their previous alphas' leadership. Safer? Sasha's voice rose. You murdered their leaders. I challenged their leaders according to pack law. Single combat, witnessed, following every traditional rule. They could have submitted. They chose to fight. Kael's gaze never wavered. And yes, I made those challenges knowing I would win, knowing most would choose death over submission, but that was their choice to make. One of the arbitrators leaned forward. What about the Voss pack? Explain that conquest. Kael's eyes found Alara's across the room. Alpha Voss allowed Eastern raiders to cross his borders repeatedly. When I demanded he secure his territory, he refused. When I offered to station northern warriors to reinforce his defenses, he declined. And when I challenged his authority to protect northern interests, he chose combat over negotiation. And then you claimed his daughter as your mate. The mate bond claimed us both. I had no control over that. Kael paused. But I won't pretend I didn't see the political advantage. Binding the Voss bloodline to northern leadership helped legitimize the territorial absorption. It turned conquest into alliance, at least symbolically. Symbolic alliance, Sasha scoffed. You forced her. He didn't force anything, Alara interrupted, stepping forward. The mate bond forced recognition. Everything after that was negotiation. The arbitrators looked at her with surprise. You wish to speak? I do. Because everyone keeps talking about me like I'm property being traded, but nobody's actually asked what I think. She moved to stand beside Kael, aware of every eye on her. Yes, Kael destroyed my pack. Yes, he killed my father in combat. And yes, he claimed me as his mate before I had time to process any of it. Those are facts. Then you support Sasha's accusations? The elder arbitrator asked. I support accuracy. And the accurate truth is more complicated than Kael is a monster or Kael is a savior. Alara took a breath. My father was weak. I loved him, but I'm not blind to his failures. He let our borders become porous, our pack defenses deteriorate. When Kael offered help, Father's pride refused it. And when Kael challenged him, Father chose death over admitting he needed support. That doesn't justify murder. It wasn't murder. It was single combat according to our laws. She met Sasha's eyes. You want to condemn Kael for following pack tradition? Fine. But then you need to condemn every alpha who's ever issued or accepted a challenge. You need to condemn the entire system that makes might equal right in our world. Murmurs rippled through the watching wolves, both Northern and Coalition. What are you suggesting? The arbitrator asked. I'm suggesting that judging Kael's actions outside the context of our culture is meaningless. He played by the rules we all agreed to. And if those rules create tyranny, then maybe the problem isn't Kael, it's the rules themselves. Silence fell across the fort. Sasha looked shaken. You're defending him. After everything, I'm defending honesty. Kael is brutal and ruthless and absolutely willing to kill when he thinks it's necessary. But he's not dishonest. He doesn't pretend to be something he's not. Alara glanced at Kael. Unlike some of us, he doesn't dress conquest up as liberation or claim violence is anything other than violence. So we should just accept tyranny because it's honest tyranny? No. We should acknowledge that our entire system is built on tyranny, alpha dominance, might makes right, challenge culture. Kael didn't invent that. He just mastered it. She turned back to the arbitrators. If you want to judge him fairly, but don't pretend he's uniquely monstrous when he's just better at playing a game we all participate in. The elder arbitrator studied her for a long moment. You surprise me, girl. Most would use this opportunity to seek revenge. Revenge doesn't rebuild destroyed packs or resurrect dead wolves. It just creates more orphans. Alara's voice steadied. I want something better, not just for me, but for everyone trapped in cycles of violence that never seem to end. And you think Kael Draven can provide that? I think he's willing to try, which is more than most alphas can say. The trial recessed for deliberation. Alara and Kael stood in an antechamber, alone for the first time in days. You didn't have to do that, Kael said quietly. Yes, I did. Someone needed to tell the truth instead of comfortable lies. Even if that truth costs you, the Coalition wolves will see you as a traitor now. I was never one of them. She met his eyes. And I'm tired of people deciding who I am without asking. Vera thought I was weak. Sasha thought I was oppressed. You thought I was a liability. None of you bothered to find out what I actually am. And what are you? Someone who refuses to be defined by other people's expectations. She managed a tired smile. Also someone who really needs this trial to end soon because I'm exhausted. Kael laughed. A real laugh. Not the bitter humor he usually employed. Join the club. The arbitrators returned after an hour of deliberation. Everyone reassembled, tension thick enough to choke on. We have reached our verdict, the elder announced. On the matter of Kael Draven's territorial expansion, we find his actions were within pack law and tradition. While his methods were brutal, they were not illegal under our current system. However, we acknowledge that the current system may need examination. Sasha's face went pale. You're not condemning him? We're acknowledging that condemning one alpha for doing what our culture encourages would be hypocrisy. The arbitrator's gaze swept both sides. If we want to end conquest cycles, we need to change the rules, not punish those who follow them effectively. This is insane. This is justice. Imperfect, complicated, but fair within the context of our laws. The elder turned to Sasha. As for your coalition, we find its formation was justified given Eastern territorial threats. However, your methods of expansion mirrored Kael's own conquest patterns. You cannot condemn him for actions you've replicated. Sasha looked stricken. Clearly, she'd expected validation, not equivalence. Finally, on the matter of Vera Voss, we unanimously condemn her actions. Attempting to take hostages violates every code of honorable warfare. She is declared outlaw, subject to execution if captured by any pack. A death sentence. Alara's stomach clenched despite everything Vera had done. Our final ruling, Kael Draven retains leadership of Northern Territories. Sasha Blackwood retains leadership of her coalition. But both must commit to new laws. No more territorial conquest without consensus from a neutral council. No more challenge culture that makes might equal right. And most importantly, cooperation against genuine external threats rather than fighting amongst ourselves. You're asking us to completely restructure Wolf Society, Kael said. We're asking you to evolve before you destroy yourselves. The elder stood. Accept these terms or face mutual destruction. Your choice. Kael and Sasha looked at each other across the room. Years of rivalry, weeks of war, countless dead on both sides, all culminating in this moment. I accept, Kael said. Sasha took longer, her jaw working. Finally, I accept. The formal proceedings concluded. Treaties were signed, witnessed, sealed with traditional oaths. And through it all, Alara stood beside Kael, feeling the weight of what they'd just committed to. Changing wolf culture itself. It should have been impossible, but somehow, standing in that border fort with both sides watching, it felt achievable. They departed separately, northern wolves to their damaged keep, coalition forces to their camps. But something had shifted. The hostility remained, but the certainty was gone. Both sides had lost people they cared about, fought for causes that turned out to be more complicated than simple good versus evil. War was easy. Peace would be harder. The journey back to Draven Keep was quiet. Warriors nursed wounds, families mourned losses, everyone processed what had happened. Alara rode beside Kael, their hands linked, the mate bond humming with shared exhaustion and tentative hope. Think it'll work? She asked. The new laws? Probably not. Change that fundamental usually requires generations. He squeezed her hand. But maybe we can start it. Plant seeds for wolves who come after us. That's surprisingly optimistic for you. I'm trying something new. Feels weird. She laughed despite herself. You're allowed to hope, you know. It's not a sign of weakness. In my experience, hope gets you killed. In my experience, giving up gets you killed faster. She looked at the keep coming into view, damaged but standing, like all of them. We survived. That counts for something. We survived because of you. Your strategies, your courage, your refusal to accept easy answers. Kale's eyes found hers. I told you once that the mate bond chose well. I was wrong. It chose perfectly. Heat flooded through her, not just from the bond, but genuine warmth at the praise. Don't get sappy on me, Alpha King. I won't know how to handle it. Noted. I'll save the emotional honesty for private moments. They rode the rest of the way in comfortable silence. And when they reached the keep, both northern wolves and curious coalition observers who'd stayed to see the verdict implementation welcomed them. Not with wild celebration, too much had been lost for that, but with acknowledgement, respect. Alara had stood before armies and demanded they see her as more than a prize or pawn. And somehow, impossibly, they had. The reconstruction would take months. The grief would take longer. And Vera was still out there somewhere, hunted and alone. But for now, there was peace. Fragile, uncertain, requiring constant maintenance, but peace nonetheless. And as Alara and Kael entered the keep together, the mate bond settled into something that felt almost comfortable. Not love, not yet, maybe never, but partnership, understanding. The foundation for something that might become more if they were patient. Your Majesty, Petra approached, looking uncharacteristically nervous. The kitchens are a disaster after the attack. Supplies destroyed, staff injured. If you have time, I'll be there in an hour, Alara promised. Need to get cleaned up first, but then we'll assess damage and start rebuilding. Thank you, Your Majesty. Petra bowed and left. Kael raised an eyebrow. You're really taking to this queen thing. Someone has to. You're busy being dramatic and authoritative. Might as well be useful. She started toward their chambers, then paused. Are we okay? After everything at the trial? You defended me after hearing every terrible thing I've done. I think we're better than okay. He followed her. Though I'm curious what you actually think of me now that you know the full scope. I think you're exactly who you've always been. Someone who does what he thinks is necessary regardless of cost. Someone who prioritizes survival over sentiment. She turned to face him. I also think you're capable of change. The Kael who would have slaughtered that entire coalition force a month ago agreed to peace talks and cultural reformation. That's growth. Or weakness. It's strength, real strength. The kind that chooses difficult solutions over easy violence. She touched his face, the gesture surprising both of them. You're learning. We both are. Kael covered her hand with his, the bond singing with connection. I don't deserve you. Probably not. But the bond doesn't care about deserve. It cares about recognition. She smiled. Besides, I don't deserve you either. We're equally terrible for each other in ways that might somehow balance out. That's the worst romantic declaration I've ever heard. Good thing this isn't romance. It's survival with benefits. He laughed, pulling her closer. We're going to be a disaster together. Probably. But at least it'll be interesting. They entered their chambers, and for the first time since the mate bond had claimed them, it felt like home instead of prison. There was still work to do, so much work. Rebuilding the keep, implementing the new laws, hunting Vera before she could cause more damage, navigating the fragile peace with the coalition. But tonight, they could rest, together. And maybe that was enough for now. 3 weeks passed before Vera made her move. Alara had expected retaliation sooner, a midnight raid, an assassination attempt, something dramatic and violent that matched her sister's fury. Instead, there was only silence. Scouts reported no sightings. Neighboring territories claimed ignorance. It was like Vera had vanished into smoke. The waiting was worse than fighting. She's planning something, Kael said one evening as they reviewed security reports. The keep was slowly being rebuilt, walls reinforced, defensive positions strengthened. Vera doesn't just give up. Neither do I. Alara marked another section of wall that needed repair. The work was endless. Every day brought new challenges in rebuilding both structures and trust. But we can't spend our entire lives waiting for her to strike. We can't afford not to. He moved to the window, staring out at the mountains. Through the bond, she felt his restlessness. She knows our defenses, our weaknesses. and she's desperate enough to try anything. Before Alara could respond, Rowan burst through the door without knocking. His expression was grim. We found her, or rather, she found us. He spread a map across the table. She's holed up in the abandoned fortress at Blackridge Pass, right on the border between northern and western territories. That fortress has been empty for decades, Kyle said. Nothing there but ruins. Not anymore. She's fortified it. Maybe 20 wolves with her, all loyal to her personally, and she's sent a message. Rowan produced a blood-stained letter. She wants to talk, just you, Alara, alone. Absolutely not, Kyle said before Alara could speak. It's obviously a trap. Of course it's a trap, but it's also an opportunity. Alara took the letter, reading Vera's familiar handwriting. Come alone, or I start sending pieces of the wolves I've captured back to you. Your choice, little sister. She has hostages. She's lying. She's not. Rowan's face was pale. 2 of my scouts went missing 3 days ago near that area. I thought they'd just been delayed, but if Vera has them, then we mount a rescue operation, Kyle said. Full force, overwhelming numbers. We don't negotiate with terrorists. We also don't sacrifice innocent wolves because we're too proud to talk. Alara set the letter down. I'm going. Like hell you are. She won't hurt me. Whatever else Vera is, she's still my sister. She wants to talk, to make me understand her side. And maybe, just maybe, there's still a chance to end this without more death. Kale's hand slammed on the table. You're being naive. She tried to trap refugees in a mine shaft. She helped orchestrate an attack that killed dozens. She's past redemption. Maybe, but I need to try. Alara met his eyes. Because if I don't, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering if I could have saved her. Through the bond, she felt his fear, raw and overwhelming. Not for himself, but for her. The mate bond had changed him in ways he still struggled to acknowledge, and the thought of losing her terrified him more than any enemy army. Then I'm coming with you, he said. She specified alone. I don't care what she specified. You're my mate. Where you go, I go. His voice softened slightly. Please, Alara, don't ask me to let you walk into danger without me. She wanted to argue, to insist she could handle this herself. But looking at him, at the genuine fear in his winter storm eyes, she couldn't. Fine, but you stay back. Let me talk to her first. If it goes bad, then you can do your Alpha King thing and tear everyone apart. Deal. They set out at dawn with a small force. 20 warriors, enough to provide backup, but not so many it looked like an invasion. Rowan insisted on coming despite Kael's objections, arguing that his scouts' lives were at stake too. The journey to Blackridge Pass took 6 hours. The fortress came into view as afternoon shadows lengthened, a crumbling structure built into the mountain face, defensible but deteriorating. Vera had chosen her ground well. I count 15 on the walls, one of their scouts reported. Maybe more inside, and they've got archers positioned to cover all approaches. Professional setup, Kael observed. She's had help planning this. Or she's just better at strategy than we gave her credit for. Alara studied the fortress. I'm going in. Wait. Kael caught her arm. If anything happens, if you feel threatened at all, scream. I'll hear it through the bond and we'll come running. I know. She covered his hand with hers. But I don't think it'll come to that. Vera wants to talk, not fight. She's already lost everything else. This is her last play. That's what makes her dangerous. That's what makes her desperate. There's a difference. Alara walked toward the fortress alone, hands raised to show she was unarmed. The gates opened as she approached, and Vera stood waiting in the courtyard, looking thinner and harder than Alara remembered. You came, Vera said, surprise flickering across her face. You threatened hostages. Of course I came. Alara lowered her hands. Where are they? Rowan's scouts. Safe, for now. Vera gestured, and 2 wolves were brought forward, bound but unharmed. See? I'm not a complete monster. Just a partial one? Just someone who's tired of being everyone's villain. Vera dismissed the guards, leaving them alone in the courtyard. Thank you for coming. I know you didn't have to. Yes, I did. You're my sister. Alara moved closer. What do you want, Vera? Really want, not the revenge story you've been selling. Vera was quiet for a long moment. I want to matter. To be seen as more than a failure who got exiled and came back wrong. She laughed bitterly. Pathetic, right? Everything I've done, all the people hurt, and at the core, I'm just desperate for validation. That's not pathetic. That's human. Alara sat on a crumbling stone wall, gesturing for Vera to join her. Father made us both feel invisible. You by exiling you, me by ignoring me. We both spent years trying to prove ourselves to someone who was never going to give us what we needed. And you found it with Cale Draven, the man who killed him? I found partnership, respect, someone who sees me as capable instead of decorative. Alara paused. But it wasn't given freely. I had to fight for every inch of recognition, had to prove myself over and over, and honestly, I'm still proving myself every day. How can you stand it, being bound to someone through force? The bond was force. Everything after was choice, his and mine. She looked at her sister. What happened to you, Vera? Not the exile, but before. What made you so angry that you'd burn everything down? Vera's composure cracked. I was 12 when Father started training me to be his successor. Told me I was special, that I'd lead the pack someday. I trained harder than anyone, learned strategy and combat and politics. And then I turned 16 and he suddenly decided females couldn't lead. Gave the heir position to our useless brother Marcus instead. I didn't know. You were 8. Father kept it quiet. Bitterness dripped from every word. I spent 4 more years trying to prove myself, trying to make him change his mind. And when I questioned his border policies, tried to show him we were vulnerable, he called me hysterical. Exiled me for undermining alpha authority. Made everyone think I died because acknowledging he threw away his daughter for telling the truth would have looked weak. Alara's throat tightened. I'm sorry, that's horrible. It made me who I am. Someone who trusts nothing but power, who believes the only way to matter is to make people fear you. Vera's voice broke. And now I've become exactly what I hated about him. Ruthless, willing to sacrifice anyone for my goals, seeing people as tools instead of family. You don't have to stay that person, don't I? I've burned every bridge, betrayed every ally. The coalition expelled me. Northern wolves want me dead. I've got 20 desperate wolves who followed me because they had nowhere else to go. She gestured at the fortress. This is my kingdom now, ruins and outcasts. Then rebuild, not the fortress, yourself. Alara reached for her sister's hand. Come back with me. Face consequences for what you've done, but do it on a path towards something better. They'll execute me. You heard the verdict. I'm declared outlaw. The verdict also said execution if captured. I'm not capturing you. You're surrendering. There's legal precedent for clemency in those cases. Alara squeezed Vera's hand. It won't be easy. You'll probably face imprisonment, community service, constant supervision, but you'll be alive. And alive means there's still a chance to become someone you're not ashamed of. Vera stared at their joined hands. Why would you help me? After everything I've done to you, to your pack? Because you're my sister. Because I remember the girl who taught me to climb trees and told me stories about brave warriors. Because somewhere under all the anger and pain, that girl is still there. Alara's voice steadied. And because if I can find partnership with the man who destroyed our pack, then maybe you can find redemption with the sister who survived it. Tears tracked down Vera's face. None of us deserve anything. We just get chances and we choose what to do with them. Alara pulled her sister into a hug, feeling Vera shake with sobs. Choose differently this time. Please. For a long moment, Vera just cried. Then, slowly, she pulled back. The wolves with me. They need asylum too. They followed me because I promised them purpose. If I surrender, they lose everything. Then they come too. We'll find places for them, in Northern Territory, Western Territory, somewhere. But they get a chance to start over, same as you. You do that? After they helped me attack your home? I do that because cycles of violence end when someone chooses mercy over justice. Alara stood, pulling Vera up with her. Come on, let's go tell Kyle he doesn't get to dramatically rescue me today. He'll be disappointed. Vera managed a watery laugh. He's going to want me in chains. Probably, but he'll also honor the surrender terms because he's learning that strength isn't always about domination. Alara started toward the gates. And if he gives you trouble, I'll handle it. That's what queens do. We make the hard calls that alphas are too proud to make themselves. They walked together into the courtyard where Vera's followers waited. She addressed them briefly, explaining the surrender terms, giving them the choice to come or flee. All 20 chose to come. "We're tired of running," one of them said. "If there's a chance at real peace, we'll take it." Kale met them at the fortress gates, every line of his body screaming tension. When he saw Vera with Ilara, his wolf rose to the surface. "She's surrendering," Ilara said before he could speak, "under terms of clemency for voluntary surrender, her and her followers. She tried to kill our people, and she'll face consequences for that, but not summary execution." Ilara moved to stand beside him, their mate bond humming with her certainty. "We're breaking cycles, remember? That means choosing rehabilitation over revenge when possible." Through the bond, she felt his struggle. Every instinct screamed at him to eliminate the threat, to protect his pack through violence. But beneath that, she felt his trust in her judgment, his willingness to defer to her wisdom on matters of mercy. "Fine," he said finally, "but she stays under guard. And at the first sign of betrayal, I know, you'll rip my throat out yourself." Vera's voice was steady. "I accept those terms." The journey back was tense. Northern warriors watched Vera and her followers with barely concealed hostility. Rowan scouts, freed from captivity, oscillated between gratitude and fury. Only Ilara's presence kept violence from erupting. They reached the keep at nightfall to find the entire pack assembled in the courtyard, word having spread about Vera's capture. The mood was ugly. Wolves who'd lost family in Vera's attack demanding immediate justice. "String her up! Execute the traitor! Make her pay!" Kael raised his hand for silence. The crowd quieted reluctantly. "Vera Voss has surrendered voluntarily under terms of clemency," he announced. "She will be held pending formal sentencing by the neutral council. Anyone who harms her or her followers before that judgment will answer to me personally." "She killed our people!" someone shouted. "And she'll face justice for that. Legal justice, not mob violence." Kael's alpha authority rolled over the crowd. "We're building something new here. A culture that values law over revenge. That starts now with the hardest case. If we can show mercy to our worst enemy, we prove we're more than animals fighting over territory." "What about the families who lost loved ones? Don't they get justice?" "They get a trial. Evidence presented, witnesses heard, punishment fitting the crime." Kael looked at Ilara. "And they get to see their queen demonstrate that strength isn't just about killing enemies. It's about integrating them when possible." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Not agreement exactly, but uncertainty. The anger was still there, but so was curiosity about this new path. Vera was taken to the cells. Not the silver-reinforced dungeon, but secure quarters where she could await formal proceedings. Her followers were housed separately, under guard but treated decently. "That could have gone worse," Rowan observed as they watched the crowd disperse. "It could have gone better too." Ilara was exhausted, emotionally and physically. "But it's a start." The formal sentencing hearing was held 2 weeks later. The same neutral arbitrators returned, this time to specifically judge Vera's actions. The evidence was damning: testimony from survivors of her attacks, documentation of her collaboration with the coalition, her own admission of attempting to take hostages. "How do you plead?" the eldest arbitrator asked. "Guilty," Vera said quietly, "to all charges. I did everything I'm accused of and more. I let my anger and pain turn me into someone I don't recognize, someone who hurt innocent people to strike at one man." She looked at Ilara. "I have no excuses. I only ask for the chance to make amends, however I can." The arbitrators deliberated for hours. When they returned, their expressions were grave. "Vera Voss, we find you guilty of conspiracy, assault, attempted kidnapping, and treason against the Northern Pack. Under normal circumstances, these crimes would warrant execution." Vera's face went pale, but she stood straight. "However," the arbitrator continued, "we acknowledge your voluntary surrender and genuine remorse. Additionally, Queen Ilara has petitioned for clemency, arguing for rehabilitation over execution. After careful consideration, we agree." Hope flickered across Vera's features. "Your sentence is as follows: 15 years of supervised community service during which you will work to rebuild what you helped destroy. You will assist with keep reconstruction, serve in non-combat support roles, and undergo regular counseling. Any violation of these terms results in immediate execution. Do you accept?" "I accept," Vera said, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you. I'll make this right. Somehow." The crowd's reaction was mixed. Some approved of the mercy shown. Others grumbled about justice denied. But no one openly rebelled against the verdict. It was progress. That night, Alara found Vera in her cell, no longer locked, but still guarded. "Thank you," Vera said, "for speaking for me, for believing I could be more than my worst choices. Thank you for choosing differently." Alara sat beside her. "It won't be easy. People will hate you for years. Every day you'll have to prove you're serious about changing." "I know, but at least I'll have days to prove it in." Vera managed a weak smile. "Who knows? Maybe in 15 years, I'll actually become someone worth forgiving." "You're already someone worth forgiving. You just need to forgive yourself too." Over the following months, the new world they'd promised began to take shape. The coalition and northern territories established formal diplomatic relations. Trade agreements replaced raiding. Joint training exercises built trust between former enemies. Kyle and Sasha met monthly to coordinate defense against genuine external threats. Pirates from the coast, bandits in the mountains, the occasional rogue pack testing their borders. Working together, they repelled attacks that either side alone would have struggled against. The new laws spread slowly. Not all packs accepted them. Some clung to traditional challenge culture, alpha dominance, might makes right philosophy. But enough adopted the reforms that momentum built. Rowan became an unexpected ally, using Western territory as a testing ground for even more progressive policies. Representative councils giving non-alphas voice in pack decisions, merit-based leadership selection instead of pure dominance displays, restorative justice over punitive punishment. "You're going to cause a revolution," Kyle told him during one summit meeting. "That's the idea," Rowan said cheerfully. "Someone has to drag wolf culture into modernity. Might as well be the youngest, most optimistic alpha in the kingdom." The word you're looking for is naive, not optimistic. Potato, potato. Alara watched them banter with amusement. They'd never be friends, too much history, too many differences in philosophy. But they'd become something better than friends, colleagues, partners in building something larger than their individual territories. The mate bond between her and Kyle had evolved too. Not into the fairy tale romance the stories promised. There was too much baggage, too many rough edges for that. But into something real, messy, complicated, occasionally infuriating, but genuine. They fought, often, about policies, about pack management, about how to balance mercy with security. But they also laughed, worked side by side, learned to read each other's moods through the bond and know when to push and when to yield. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. 6 months after Vera's sentencing, Alara stood on the newly repaired battlements watching the sun set over mountains that marked the border between northern and western territories. Those borders meant something different now, not barriers between enemies, but bridges between allies. Kyle joined her, wrapping an arm around her waist. Through the bond, she felt his contentment, a rare emotion for him, but genuine. "The council meeting went well," he said. 3 more packs have agreed to adopt the new laws. That's 12 total. Out of how many in the kingdom? 47. He shrugged. "It's a start." "It's more than a start. It's a movement." She leaned into his warmth. Who would have thought? The ruthless Alpha King becoming an advocate for progressive reform. "I'm not that ruthless anymore. You've domesticated me. I've done no such thing. You're still terrifying when you want to be." She smiled. "You've just learned there are better tools than fear for getting what you want." "Such as?" "Respect, trust, actual leadership instead of just dominance." She turned to face him. "The pack doesn't follow you because they're afraid anymore. They follow because they believe in what we're building." "What you're building? I'm just the muscle. You're the foundation, I'm the architect. We're partners, equals contributing different strengths toward a shared vision." She kissed him lightly. "That's what the mate bond was supposed to create. It just took us a while to figure out how." Movement in the courtyard below caught her attention. Vera, working with a construction crew to repair the outer wall. She'd thrown herself into the community service with surprising dedication, working harder than required, seeking every opportunity to prove her commitment to change. "Think she'll make it?" Kyle asked, following Alara's gaze. "I think she'll try. Whether that's enough, we'll see." Alara watched her sister laugh at something one of the workers said. But giving her the chance was the right choice. Even if it doesn't work out, we proved we could choose mercy over revenge. That matters. "You really believe that? That showing mercy to someone who tried to destroy us was worth the risk?" "I believe that breaking cycles requires taking risks. That creating new systems means giving second chances even when they're not deserved. That change happens when we choose to be better than we have to be." She met his eyes. "You taught me that survival requires ruthlessness. I'm teaching you that sometimes survival requires mercy. We balance each other." Kale pulled her closer. "I love you." The words hung in the air between them, the first time either had said them out loud. The mate bond had forced recognition, forced connection. But love? That had developed slowly, painfully, through shared trials and hard-won trust. "I love you too," Alara said, and meant it. Not the passionate romance of legend, but something deeper. Partnership, understanding, choosing each other every day despite every reason not to. They stood together on the battlements as darkness fell, watching their kingdoms settle into evening routines. Families gathered for meals. Warriors changed guard shifts. Healers tended patients. Life continuing despite everything that had tried to destroy it. Below, Mara emerged from the healers' quarters and called up to them. "Your Majesties, sorry to interrupt, but we've got a situation." "What kind of situation?" Kyle called back. "The good kind. Delegation from the Eastern Territories. They're requesting to join the Alliance. Says they've heard about the reforms and want to be part of building the new system." Alara and Kyle exchanged glances. The Eastern Territories, where this whole mess had started, where the coalition had been born, where threats to their borders had justified so much violence. Now they wanted peace. "Tell them we'll meet tomorrow," Alara decided. "Full formal reception, all appropriate honors. This could be the breakthrough we've been hoping for." "On it." Mara disappeared back inside. "You realize what this means?" Kyle said. "If the East joins the Alliance, we'd have unified most of the kingdom under the new laws. That's impossible, revolutionary, terrifying." Alara grinned. "All of the above, but also necessary. We can't stay fractured forever. Eventually, we either unite or destroy each other." "And you think we can actually pull this off? Unify the kingdom?" "I think we can try. We've accomplished everything else people said was impossible. Survived a siege, brokered peace with enemies, reformed wolf culture, integrated traitors into productive pack members. Why stop now?" Kael laughed, the sound rich and genuine. "You know what? You're right. We've already done the impossible. Might as well aim higher." They returned to the keep together, already planning for the next challenge. Because there would always be a next challenge. That was the nature of leadership, of change, of building something new from the ruins of the old. But for the first time since the mate bond had claimed them, Alara felt genuinely hopeful. Not the naive optimism of someone who hadn't seen darkness, but the earned hope of someone who'd walked through fire and emerged stronger. She'd lost her family, her home, her old identity. She'd been claimed by force, marked against her will, thrown into a role she'd never asked for. And somehow, impossibly, she'd found herself. Not the overlooked daughter of a weak alpha, not the captive mate of a ruthless king, but Alara Draven, queen in her own right, leader who'd chosen mercy and strength in equal measure, woman who'd refused to be defined by others' expectations. The future was uncertain. The Eastern delegation might reject the alliance. Neighboring territories might resist reform. Vera might fail at rehabilitation. 1,000 things could go wrong, but they'd face it together, her and Kael, partners bound by choice as much as fate. And that, she thought, was enough. The mate bond hummed contentedly between them as they entered the great hall, ready for whatever came next. Because the strength of a bond wasn't measured in how smoothly it formed, but in how well it weathered storms. Theirs had weathered hurricanes, and it had held. That night, as Alara fell asleep in Kael's arms, she dreamed not of the past or the battles fought, but of the future they were building. A kingdom where strength meant more than violence, where leadership meant service, not just dominance, where second chances were possible for those willing to earn them. It wouldn't be easy. Nothing worth doing ever was. But for the first time in her life, Elara wasn't just surviving, she was thriving. And in a world built on power and fear, that was the most revolutionary act of all. The Alpha's captive had become the catalyst for change. The conquered had become the conqueror, not of territories, but of old systems that no longer served them. And the woman who'd been claimed by fate had claimed her own destiny in return. That was her victory. Not perfect, not complete, but real. And in the end, that was all that mattered.